This guy with a face that looks like he just lost the lottery is our protagonist. Although this necromancer is different from the others, he is, in fact, a necromancer. It's an extremely powerful class. Out of 7.9 billion people, only about 1,000 possess this ability. An incredibly rare profession, as you can imagine. Anyone who possesses this class like Dong-hun is envied like crazy because it's recently been considered the most powerful ability of all. However, little do they know that Dong-hun is the one who's envious of them because he is a cursed necromancer, which means he can only summon the lowest level E-rank skeletons. That is until one day when he accidentally discovered that the skeletons he summons seem to be sentient and that this skill isn't as useless as he thought. Our story begins with a scene inside a certain forest. A clash is underway between a horde of goblin monsters and a party of adventurers. And right now, the adventurers' situation doesn't look too good. More goblins are heading this way. What are you all doing? Stop them! Defense team, move to the front. Hold this formation. You there, focus, you're out of position. Do you want to get killed before the battle even begins? The captain yelled at the top of his lungs. No! No way! Someone cried out in panic. Then a massive explosion erupted right in front of him, kicking up a thick cloud of smoke and dust. Realizing the situation was bad, the captain quickly turned around. He said to the young man, "Mr. Mage, we need your assistance, as promised. If you would..." "Of course. I'm here as a mercenary after all," Dong-hun replied cheerfully. Then he raised his skull-topped staff high and began muttering an incantation. "Come forth." As soon as the words were spoken from within the skull's eye sockets, eerie streams of purple energy erupted forward, and very quickly they transformed into 3 skeletons holding a sword, a spear, and a bow, and just like that, after being summoned, all 3 skeletons charged forward fearlessly to fight the goblin horde. And as they joined the battle, the others in the party let out a sigh of relief. So this is really the summoning art that's considered the most powerful ability these days. A man in bronze armor spoke up. "Whoa, I never thought I'd see something like this in an E-rank dungeon. He'll definitely become one of the top rankers, if he unlocks his full potential." Hearing this, another person nudged his captain and teased, "Amazing. I knew there was a reason you were so relaxed, Captain. So this was the reason. How'd you manage to recruit someone so powerful anyway?" Up ahead, all their words of praise reached Dong-hun's ears. However, his face didn't show a single trace of happiness. "Great. Just my luck. A status befitting the unique power of necromancy. Out of 7.9 billion people, only about 1,000 have this ability. An extremely rare profession. However, I'm just an abnormal necromancer." Thinking about this, as if feeling insecure, Dong-hun quietly pulled his hood down. Meanwhile, the man in the brown armor from behind spoke up curiously. "Are those the skeleton soldiers people always talk about? It's the most basic summon among a necromancer's spells, but why is he only summoning them?" Hearing that, the captain clicked his tongue at his naivete. "Why do you think?" He's making a statement that for an E-rank dungeon, these skeleton soldiers are more than enough to handle it. "Damn, I'm so jealous," he said with a sigh, not knowing that Dong-hun was the one who was jealous of them. "Jealous, you're jealous. I'm the one who should be jealous of you guys," he thought as tears streamed down his face. Because he was a cursed E-rank necromancer. You are a manipulator of the souls of the dead, a necromancer. You can overwhelm your enemies with fearsome spirits and poisons. However, you have been cursed. You can only summon skeletons. To explain this situation, we have to go back about 15 years to when humanity began to receive special abilities when they came of age at 20. The content of these special powers was completely random. Some received powers related to blacksmithing and tailoring, while others received support powers like scouting, recovery, or enhancement. Because these abilities were granted purely based on luck, not everyone was satisfied with the power they received. Even so, thanks to these abilities, humanity was able to survive the invasion of monsters. But still, I became a necromancer that everyone envies. Yet my growth is stunted, at a level where I can only summon E-rank skeletons until the day I die. That's why. To think I've become the one carrying the team in an E-rank dungeon. Dong-hun let out another heavy sigh. Time flew by, and after helping the low-level party clear out the goblins, Dong-hun returned to the office to report back to his superior. "Captain, I've finished my work for the day." "Ah, you're all done?" the captain asked with a smile. "Yes, I've completed my daily assignment with the E-rank dungeon squad, and the report is finished too." "Well, then I'll be leaving now." With that, Dong-hun quickly left the company. On his way back, Dong-hoon was lost in thought. Seriously, I don't even know what to say anymore. At the very least, they could have made my skill bad enough that no one would have any expectations for me. But what the hell is this? They gave me hope only to leave me feeling this hopeless. If only it were just a resource-generating skill. Even though I'm a million-soul necromancer, my pay for today's dungeon run was only 40,000 won. I could probably make more working a part-time job. Still, since this is what I really want to do, I can't give up. Dong-hoon gave himself a pep talk and hurried forward. But just then, a dungeon news report playing on a large screen caught his attention. Good news today, the Dark Lord, who previously succeeded in conquering the Moonlight Gate, has become a leader-class hunter after just 3 years of activity. With this development, South Korea officially has 37 global leaders, putting us just one step behind the United States. Isn't that fantastic? And this is also the first time a hunter has become a leader in only 3 years, excluding the core hunters, of course. This proves just how powerful the million-soul necromancer class truly is. Haha, that's right, I'm so glad our country finally has its own million-soul necromancer. His colleague agreed with a bright smile. Meanwhile, hearing that someone with the same class as him had achieved such great success, and then looking at his own situation, he couldn't hold back his anger and bit his lip hard. This just makes me even more furious. That guy awakened his abilities on the same day as me. One becomes a leader in 3 years while the other is still accursed. Million-soul necromancer who can only summon a few skeletons. How is that even possible? Thinking about this, a furious fire ignited within Dong-hoon. Then, as if unable to accept it, he headed to an empty lot where some scarecrows were set up for practice. This may be reality, but that doesn't mean I have to resent reality and just sit here doing nothing. Let's get ready. Time to work, you guys. After speaking, he summoned his familiar skeletons. Skill, E rank, skeleton summon. Effect 1. Consumes 10 mana to summon one. Normal skeleton. Up to 10 skeletons can be summoned at once. Effect 2 skeletons can be named. Back to Dong-hoon, he was surprised when he first read that he could name each skeleton. He had never seen a skill with a description like that before. Could it be that it's somehow different from others? Of course, that was just a moment of foolishness on my part. Thinking about his past naivety brought tears to Dong-hoon's eyes. He then focused on his purpose for being here and said, "Hello again, my children. Loosen up a bit, take care of your joints." Hearing this, the skeletons twisted their shoulders and necks to warm up, and by some strange quirk, Dong-hoon always got the same skeletons every time he summoned. The great sword for skeleton 1, the long spear for skeleton 2, and the bow and arrow for skeleton 3. All right, let's practice. Dong-hoon gave the order, then flopped down to the side to watch his minions train with the scarecrows. As he watched them, Dong-hoon thought to himself, I'm trying to train them. I've seen some results so far. These guys couldn't even beat a single goblin at first, but now they can easily handle 3 at once. But that's it. E rank is still E rank. No matter how hard I train them, and even if I have a C rank instructor help them, they just don't get any stronger. Man, my life is pathetic, but there's nothing more I can do. Someone once said, a person who lives without a dream is more pathetic than a person who has a dream they can't achieve. Lost in thought. Dong-hoon had no idea he'd just been spotted by an orc not far away, and then it began to move its massive body. Its form emerged from the bushes, startling Dong-hoon and making him stumble back a few steps. What the an orc? Why is there an orc here? And just to make things worse, the moment this huge beast appeared, all of my skeletons were intimidated by the presence of such a powerful creature. Their stats dropped by 20%. You guys are completely useless. Dong-hoon roared, seeing his underlings falter like that. But what worried him more was the appearance of this thing. In fact, if an orc appeared here, it means there's been a dungeon break nearby. A dungeon break is when an uncleared dungeon collapses, releasing monsters into the world. Damn it, I can't die here. He gritted his teeth as the orc raised the axe in its hand and swung it straight at him. Block it, he screamed, and obeying the command, Skeleton 1 immediately rushed forward, using the sword in its hand to block the axe blade. But with the power of an E-rank monster, how could it possibly fight an orc? Immediately after, the greenskin put in a little effort and easily sent Skeleton 1 flying into Skeleton 2. Notification: Skeleton 1 has been destroyed. Notification: Skeleton 2 has been destroyed. The 2 consecutive notification windows left Dong-hoon's face completely blank. He was out of options. He had no more underlings to protect him. He had no choice but to turn tail and run. At the same time, without needing an order from Dong-hun Skeleton 3, provided covering fire from a distance with its bow, even though it dealt no damage. But it was at least enough to slow the orc down a bit. That's it, Skeleton 3. Keep it busy. Even though my life is so pathetic I still want to live, I still have 70 mana. Which means I can summon 7 more skeletons. Without a moment's hesitation, he put his thought into action. Dong-hun immediately used his summoning spell to call Skeleton 1 and Skeleton 2 back into the fight. From the rear, Dong-hun issued commands to all 3. Skeleton 1, Skeleton 2, defend. Skeleton 3, attack from range. Turning back to the massive orc, it didn't give them any time to strategize. It charged forward and slammed its axe straight into Skeleton 1's head, splitting its skull in 2. Seeing this, Dong-hun immediately took off running again because from the very beginning, he never thought he could actually defeat this orc. He only wanted to use his skeletons to stall for time. Summon Skeleton 1 and Skeleton 2 run, then summon them again. Time flew by like this, and after running for a while, Dong-hun was dog-tired. How many minutes has it been? He wondered. At the same time, a system notification popped up. You have run out of mana. Would you like to recharge? Try resting. Rest right now. Dong-hun scoffed. The dangerous orc was still standing before him without a single scratch. At this point, he was truly out of tricks. Is this the end? Dong-hun mumbled. But luckily for him, he's the main character after all. Just at that critical moment, a star of hope appeared. A radiant golden notification window suddenly popped up in front of Dong-hun. Check notification. Conditions met. The sudden notification left the main character bewildered, unable to grasp the situation. What is this? I remember seeing this pop up before, but I didn't have time to check it then. Wait a minute, but this is... He thought, his eyes glued to the newly appeared notification window. You have completed a hidden condition. Special ability. Special ability of the cursed Necromancer. Condition: use the 10,000 times rule. A colossal effort is needed to upgrade your special ability. Use the E-rank skeleton summoning skill 10,000 times. Notification. Congratulations, your rank has been upgraded to D rank. Rewards related to your rank up will be sent immediately. Reading this line, Dong-hun felt like he'd just found a lifeline. All right, he yelled. Hurry, hurry, give me anything. On the other side, the orc seemed to sense something was wrong and launched an attack. At the same time, the reward arrived. Your mana has been refreshed. E-rank skeleton. Summoning skill has been changed to D-rank skeleton summoning skill. Just as the notification ended, the 3 skeletons began to radiate a soft, gentle yellow light. Next, Skeleton 1 calmly swung its sword and easily blocked the greenskin's attack, making Dong-hun's eyes nearly pop out of their sockets. What Skeleton 1's power has completely changed. My mana has been refreshed too. Let's try out this new skill. He thought, not hesitating for a second. Excited, Dong-hun immediately summoned 2 more skeletons, bringing the total number of his underlings to 5, using D-rank skeleton summoning skill, 10 mana consumed. Skeleton 4 has been summoned. Skeleton 5 has been summoned. The main weapons for the new skeletons have been chosen. All I could see was that Skeleton 4 was holding a wide shield, while Skeleton 5's weapon was a crystal scepter. As for Dong-hun, I really couldn't have asked for anything better than this. Wait, they can use weapons like this, and they can even be a defender and a mage. That's a pretty balanced team. Skeletons 1, 2, and 3 returned to the fight. While Skeletons 1 and 2 were restraining the orc Skeleton 4, charged straight towards it with its shield like a tank, startling the huge beast. It immediately raised its weapon and slashed straight at the shield. But right after that, its own axe was sent flying. Then, before the orc could retrieve its weapon, a giant fireball descended upon it from above. This was the fireball skill launched by Skeleton 5. Just like that, the orc's entire body was engulfed in scorching flames, and taking this opportunity was our good friend Skeleton 2, who gripped its spear tightly and pierced it straight through the top of the brute's head, officially ending its life. Notification: you have defeated the super goblin. Back to Dong-hun. The rapid change of fortune was so sudden that it left him unable to process the situation. I thought I was a goner for sure, but it seems fate doesn't want me to reincarnate just yet. Thinking about this, Dong-hun's smile stretched from ear to ear. Time passed quickly. After returning to his dump, Dong-hun finally had a moment to stuff his face and check his status. Status window. Hunter Yu Dong-hun. Nickname 10. Energy 100 out of 100. Special Authority Cursed Summoner, rank D. You possess the Necromancer class with the ability to handle the souls of the dead. You can subdue opponents with terrifying ghosts and poison. However, you have been cursed. You can only summon skeletons. Skill Skeleton Summoning Awakening. Rank D. Reading this, seeing that he had escaped his rank E gatekeeper title, Dong-hun finally let out a satisfied smile. I can't believe it. I never thought my ability could actually grow. My efforts have paid off. There's no room for doubt anymore. That's right. I don't know when I'll reach rank C, but regardless, I'm very satisfied with what I have now. I need to get back to basics. The power of an intermediate-grade skeleton is so impressive. I wonder what would happen if they became even stronger. What if Skeleton 5 continuously used blizzards while Skeletons 1 and 2 became a swordsman and a spearman? All right, let's give it a try. Dong-hun quietly planned in his head. Time passed quickly. The next day, just to get something to eat, he dragged himself to the company. Meanwhile, the conversation between two people up ahead caught his attention. That's going to be a troublesome job. Besides the insurance, the hazard pay will have to be 10 times the usual fee. With a fee like that, I'm willing to be support. I could also gain some experience from this job. Nearby, Dong-hun overheard the talk of compensation and glanced over. He observed the young man curious. What's going on? That's a blue badge. So he's rank C. What's a high-ranking hunter like him doing here? As he was thinking, before Dong-hun could figure anything out, his superior ran over and clapped him on the shoulder. Hey, Dong-hun, there you are. Come over here and see this. This is big news, you hear. What is it? The main character asked curiously. His team leader then blurted it all out. You know the Paran Guild, right? The guild founded by Gi Paran, of course I know it. The main character nodded. After all, no one in Korea is unfamiliar with that guild's name. The Blue Guild. Everyone in Korea knows about the prestigious guild founded by Korea's top hunter. Gi Paran the brilliant archer? Returning to the team leader, seeing that Dong-hun already knew, he continued to explain. It seems they're going to raid a dungeon. It's a newly opened one, and they need more support staff. The pay is pretty good, too. The pay is 10 times the usual rate, and they're recruiting urgently. 10 times. The main character exclaimed, shocked at such an unusually high figure. Seeing the main character's disbelieving expression, his senior nodded in confirmation. That's right. They're even accepting rank E members. Are you interested? Let's see now. To be honest, the other requirements are all garbage, he said with a shrug. Meanwhile, Dong-hun wasn't foolish enough to agree hastily. They were offering such a high number for a reason. There's definitely a catch. Let's see. I think I should give this dungeon a try. Is there anything special about it? Hearing that the team leader nodded and opened a virtual map for him to see. It's a new dungeon discovered near Peru, and it's pretty brutal. 5 teams have already failed in there, in clearing this dungeon. What 5 teams have already failed? Dong-hun yelled. That's right. Its rank hasn't even been determined yet. The teams that tried to explore it were all amateurs, but this time the famous Parang Guild is joining in, so what could possibly go wrong? Besides, you're just support, so you don't have to fight. Just do your job well and collect the money. Easy, right? As he spoke, the senior colleague smiled brightly at Dong-hun. But despite his sweet words, Dong-hun still had a bad feeling about this job. What should I do? A reward that's 10 times the usual. This is probably hazard pay for this dungeon. An unranked dungeon. If I'm being honest with myself, I'm still exhausted after facing that orc yesterday, but this is really tempting. That dark mage said something in an interview. Do you want to rank up faster? You have to enter dungeons ranked higher than your own level. There's no other way. The higher you rank up, the greater the risk. However, that also means greater opportunities and rewards. Thinking about this, so that he wouldn't be left too far behind, Dong-hun decided to accept. All right then. Then I'll join. That's right. You shouldn't miss this opportunity, the senior happily replied. So when do we leave? In a week from Paru Station. Then can I take a week off? He said as he handed back the commitment form he had just signed. And to this, the senior colleague readily agreed. Yeah, sure. Thanks, man. I'll treat you to a meal. Make it 2 meals, the greedy guy suggested, which made the senior's lips twitch. 2 haha, all right, I'll treat you. Time flew by. The scene changes to the familiar training ground. To prepare for the dungeon raid in a week's time, Dong-hun was busy training his skeleton soldiers. Unlike before, his training was now truly effective. These skeletons would get stronger and stronger. And if they keep going like this, I might even become a top player. Thinking about this future prospect, a surge of fighting spirit boiled up inside Dong-hun. All right. Skeleton 1 and Skeleton 3 focus on the target good. Now let's see what a D-rank skeleton can do. After speaking, he stood confidently with his arms crossed, watching his underlings perform. And they didn't disappoint him. The abilities of these minions had improved greatly. Compared to when they were still E-rank with just one strike, Skeleton 1 could easily slice a scarecrow in two. Skeleton 2 could pierce a large hole through a scarecrow's body, and Skeleton 3's arrow could even pierce through 3 tree trunks and keep on flying. Their attack power had grown so much that Dong-hun didn't even know if these were really his skeleton soldiers anymore. Is this the power of a D rank? It's almost as strong as a C rank. I knew they'd gotten a lot stronger, but I didn't think they'd be this strong. First, I need to change my training equipment. These wooden scarecrows are useless now. Looks like I'll have to spend more money. Anyway, it's great that they've gotten stronger. The real problem is whether there's a strong opponent. Who will target me instead of the skeletons? No matter how strong my skeletons are, it's no good if the enemy just focuses their attacks on me. As he was thinking this, still unsure what to do, to protect himself, while the skeleton soldiers were fighting, Skeleton 5 approached him and gestured. Next, it pointed its staff at Dong-hun and used some kind of magic. It enveloped him in a cage of light. On his side, Dong-hun saw Skeleton 5 act on its own like that. He looked at it with eyes full of suspicion. What just happened? Did it read my mind? In response to the question, Skeleton 5 nodded vigorously. Wait, did you just answer me? For real. Before they could only follow my orders, but now they can express their own intentions. And what's with this air shield? Does it have other skills besides fireball? The more Dong-hun thought about it, the more curious he became. And then, just then, Skeleton 4 suddenly walked up behind him and slammed the shield in its hand onto the ground. Then it pointed towards the scarecrows. Seeing it get knocked down like that, Dong-hun couldn't understand. What on earth is this guy trying to convey? After a few minutes, Dong-hun finally understood Skeleton 4's intention. It turned out it was going to replace the training dummy. Look at it acting as a training partner for its skeleton seniors. And just as you'd expect from a tank, even though it was being attacked constantly, that huge shield of its didn't even have a single scratch on it. Oh, it's pretty sturdy, huh? Dong-hun said with a smile, having found another unexpected joy. Because if he could get the skeleton knight to help with training, Dong-hun wouldn't need to buy any more equipment. This time, let's test if the air shield is safe. With that thought, he turned to Skeleton 5 and requested, Skeleton 5, try attacking me this time. Hearing this, although Skeleton 5 was a bit confused, wondering what had gotten into its master, it still used the level 1 air shield skill on our main character. Next, he let Skeleton 2 use its spear to thrust directly at him, and the air shield skill didn't disappoint him. The spearhead was blocked by an invisible barrier. Good, not bad at all, Dong-hun thought to himself and clapped to praise the group. Great, now keep up the training. With that, he eagerly jumped into training with his group of soldiers. And during this time, he also had the other skeleton soldiers attack him with different weapons to test them out. Seeing the training going so well, Dong-hun chuckled to himself. But this wasn't all, because right after that, a welcome notification appeared before him. Notification. The strength of Skeleton 1 through Skeleton 5 has increased by 1. Congratulations due to the first growth after awakening. The status window has been unlocked. Status window. Name Skeleton 1. Energy 100 out of 100. Special authority Awakened Skeleton. Class Swordsman. Rank D. Stats Strength 23. Mana 10, Agility 19. Technique 21. Health 20. Skills owned. Low rank cut level 2. Back to Dong-hun. The sudden appearance of the little guy's status window made his head spin, unable to keep up with the development. Wait a minute. If Skeleton 1 has a status window, do the others have one too? In response to his question right after that, the status windows for the other 4 skeleton soldiers appeared before his eyes. The stats for Skeleton 1, Skeleton 2, and Skeleton 3 were quite similar. Skeleton 2 possessed the skill, Low Rank Thrust Level 2. Meanwhile, Skeleton 3 possessed Low Rank Continuous Shot Level 2 and Safe Vision Level 2. As for the 2 summoned later Skeleton 4 and Skeleton 5, their stats were about half as low as their seniors. Skeleton 4 possessed Low Rank Dodge Level 1 and Low Rank Taunt Level 1. Skeleton 5 possessed the Fireball skill. Level 1 and air shield level 1. Back to our main character. If the system asked him to lick its feet right now, he'd gladly do it. Unbelievable. Because of the training, the stats of Skeleton 1, 2, and 3 are different from Skeleton 4 and 5's. All my efforts up to this point haven't been for nothing. So now I just need to develop them comprehensively, right? All right, if that's the case, let's help them grow into the strongest skeletons in the world. And just like that, time flew by. 1 week later, Dong-hun was at the gathering point preparing to raid the dungeon. He double-checked all the equipment. Food and medicine he brought along, then nodded, relieved. All right, I bought a sleeping bag and plenty of emergency food. My purpose here is to be a supporter. Let's do this. As he thought this, our main character hesitantly stepped forward. At that same moment, a male adventurer shouted to the group, "Summoners up here! Come here and follow the instructions. You need to wait in front of the dungeon gate. We'll all go in at the same time." Back to Dong-hun, he stared at the pitch-black gate. It was radiating a dangerous aura, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The dungeon isn't far from Paru Station. I can feel a faint energy. 200 meters from here, there's a pit inside. It seems like a normal dungeon that formed naturally. Not just Dong-hun, but the others looking at the gate were also sweating profusely. I feel so tense. Yeah, it's probably a high-difficulty dungeon. I heard that the thicker the colored band around the gate, the higher the chance it's complex and difficult, someone said, sharing a rumor they'd heard. But soon enough, the atmosphere among the group relaxed. Well, since we're with the Parang Guild, I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Anyway, I just want to get this over with quickly so I can go home and have a bowl of porridge and a glass of soju, someone said. That sounds delicious, another person laughed, while Dong-hun felt a bit annoyed seeing how nonchalant this group was. Feeling safe just because we're with a big guild. What nonsense! There are so many dungeons in this world, and thousands of hunters have gone missing inside them. How many people have died overshadowed by the glamorous aura of those at the top, but no matter what I'm going in, I'm going to put my life on the line and risk it all. Dong-hun promised himself just before a girl came up behind him and spoke. Excuse me. Hearing the call, our main character turned around, but there was no one there. What, I'm sure I just heard a woman's voice. Dong-hun thought, a puzzled look clear on his face. Seeing this, the voice spoke up again. Interesting. The energy I'm sensing is D rank. It's more than that. You're wearing an E rank badge and you're a support. Who are you? She thought, turning towards Dong-hun. He clearly realized that he was being targeted. Excuse me, but who are you? Dong-hun asked. Shouldn't I be the one asking that? Why would you hide your abilities from us at Parang and decide to join as a support? The accusatory tone of her voice immediately put Dong-hun on the defensive. It seemed this person had completely misunderstood something, but how could she even notice a detail like that? Besides, Parang is full of A-rank hunters. What's the big deal about the difference between D and E rank anyway? He grit his teeth. It seemed his own weakness had limited his perspective. The Parang Guild was taking this raid far more seriously than he'd thought. That look on your face just makes me more suspicious. Are you a spy who's had acting lessons? You've underestimated Parang's intelligence network. Did you think I wouldn't recognize a spy from another guild? As she spoke, she revealed herself to Dong-hun. She was a beautiful young woman with a long purple ponytail and a toned body dressed in a short tracksuit. It was clear she trained incredibly hard, but Dong-hun wasn't dazed by her beauty. Instead, his attention was drawn to the badge she wore on her hip. What? A gold badge, reserved only for S rank or higher. That means this woman is an S ranker, one of South Korea's 37 top rankers, the Shadow Queen Jisoo-jun, the younger sister of Jisoo Parang, head of the Parang Guild, known for her unique assassination abilities. She was the one person you should never cross. But her scary reputation aside, I can't believe I have the chance to talk to a top ranker I've always admired, he thought to himself. Despite being a bit flustered in front of his idol, Dong-hun quickly raised a hand to explain, Miss, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not a spy from another guild, I'm just a D-rank hunter. If it were one of Parang's rivals, they'd surely be a major guild. Why would they use a hunter like me? He tried to prove he had no malicious intent, and seeing the utterly baffled look on his face, Soo-jun couldn't help but burst out laughing. Haha, sorry, I was just kidding. Huh, what? The main character said, his expression completely blank, as if his brain had just short-circuited. The screws in Dong-hun's head felt like they were coming loose, no longer working properly. I really don't get why someone of her caliber would mess with a nobody like me. Don't tell me she's already investigated my background. Surely training those frantic skeletons would attract the attention of the top rankers. But either way, this is a golden opportunity to be noticed by one of them. The main character's mind was racing. Back to Sujun, realizing she'd thoroughly spooked him, she smiled brightly. Sorry, was I being too forward? My apologies if I was too rude. I just found it fascinating that a support with an E-rank badge has a skill capable of holding 5 D-rank energy signatures. Sujun explained, a bit flustered. Meanwhile, given her ability to sense energy, Dong-hoon's eyes went wide. I have nothing to say. She's absolutely right, he thought. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Dong-hoon's mind. Wait a second. Does that mean she figured out my strength just by sensing my energy? He looked back toward Sujun. She wore a mysterious smile and explained, Actually, my brother asked me to join the second team's expedition as a scout, so I'm looking for a support. And as it happens, I found a rather suspicious person right here. What do you think feel like volunteering to be my scout? It might be a little dangerous, though. With those skills, you're definitely the most qualified person among the supports. And you don't seem like the type to get scared and run away, Sujun said, staring intently at Dong-hoon with a look of absolute certainty. Is that so? He stammered in reply. Of course. I'm a very good judge of character. As for the reward, I promise to double it for you. The rich lady's cheerful declaration left a poor guy like Dong-hoon almost speechless at her extravagance. A dungeon expedition with a top ranker, and she's even offering double the pay. So what do you think? Sujun shrugged. I'll do it. Dong-hoon raised his hand without a moment's hesitation. He couldn't possibly pass up a golden opportunity like this. All he had to do was get on this rich lady's good side for a bit. Doing so would put him 60 or 75 steps ahead of everyone else's efforts. Now about the dungeon system. The difficulty of dungeons is divided from E rank to S rank. This rank isn't set by the system, so humanity has to rank and quantify it themselves, a quote from the S rank hunter White Shadow during an interview. He said that you want to know the dungeon's rank beforehand. It's a shame, but there's no method to know in advance. You can only go in and check for yourself. If I were to give a small tip, it would be to check the brightness of the surrounding colors. The darker the dungeon, the higher the chance it's a higher level one. But even this isn't entirely accurate. The associations had to establish a specific standard. If it can't be cleared even with 5 hunters of the same rank, its rank is increased. If 5 or more A-rank hunters enter but are unable to complete it, then the dungeon will be classified as an S-rank dungeon. Ultimately, it's a method that can't avoid sacrificing someone. The unranked dungeon that Dong-hoon is about to enter is one of those types, but they couldn't send in their entire main force because they had already sent a reconnaissance team in first. Thanks to that, Dong-hoon could smell the dungeon's air faster than the other mercenaries, back to our main character after stepping inside the gate and coming out the other side. He immediately found himself inside a cave, radiating a faint light. A cave. Luckily, we don't have any visibility problems thanks to the glowing gems. Thinking this, he began to feel a little more at ease. Meanwhile, a four-eyed guy in this party enthusiastically suggested, "Oh, glowing gems, if we take them and sell them, we could probably make a pretty penny." Hearing this, the red-haired guy next to him immediately shook his head and advised, "Stop it. Don't you know about those hunters who died after recklessly touching items inside dungeons?" From the back, Dong-hoon saw the somewhat relaxed atmosphere and thought, "Everyone seems relaxed, huh?" Well, that's understandable, because except for Ji Sujun, who is S-rank, everyone else is wearing an A-rank insignia. Thinking about how he gets to tag along with this incredible team, Dong-hoon felt that his earlier worries were a bit excessive. Scene changed to Sujun. After a few warm-up stretches, she turned to instruct the group. "Everyone don't waste time, get ready. First, Fai Kim and Tiuhua will go scout the area." "Understood." The two of them nodded in agreement. Next, Sujun turned to speak to another person in the group. "And guide Kang Sung-hyuk, you find the exit and protect the support." "I know. I figured you'd ask me to do that." "Are you confident?" Sujun asked again. And to this question, Kang Sung-hyuk put on a face more certain than a pyramid scheme salesman. "If I said no, wouldn't my nickname be disgraced?" For your information, Kang Sung-hyuk has a rather unusual nickname, the Guide. It's a name given by the system because he is extremely good at finding paths inside dungeons. Back to the story. At this point, Sujun had no more instructions to give. "All right then, let's move out quickly." With that said, she led the group. From the back, the older man nudged the main character's shoulder and asked, "Hey, support, you nervous?" Seeing this person suddenly speak to him, Dong-hun was a bit surprised but nodded. Ah, yes. It would be a lie to say I'm not nervous at all. Then keep being nervous, he said in a cold voice, leaving Dong-hun a bit stunned, not understanding the intention behind the words. Let me tell you, there are more than one or two suspicious things about this dungeon. I mean, the Shadow Queen is a leader who wouldn't tell you to be careful for no reason. This dungeon, it's strangely quiet. The structure is simple. There's a high probability that there are no monsters because if something were living in this small cave, there would definitely be vibrations or some kind of sound. That means there might be some kind of hidden mechanism. The older man laid out his deductions one by one, and as expected of someone with the title The Guide, he had only just stepped inside the gate, yet he had already gathered a series of information, so much so that a novice like Dong-hun behind him couldn't hide it. His shock. Whoa, you can tell all that without even searching, hearing that Kang Sung-hyuk took the opportunity to show off his skills. Of course, my friend. I've been working in this dungeon business for many years now. Follow me. First, let us try to find the exit as Soo-jun requested. As he spoke, the older man pointed in a different direction away from the other hunters. But it should be fine, right? Dong-hun muttered. And just like that, time passed quickly. The two groups had split up, and the further they went, for some reason Kang Sung-hyuk started breaking out in a cold sweat. I have a bad feeling. No traps, no clues. Hey, support, does your body feel heavy? Or is it just me? He asked doubtfully while Dong-hun also had a bad feeling and was thinking about bailing. I've got a chill down my spine. Are you sure we should keep going? In response to the question, all of Kang Sun-guk's earlier confidence vanished. I'm not sure anymore. This is the first time I've ever felt anything like this. Not even facing a top ranker made me feel this way. It feels like something incredibly dangerous is here. After a pause, Kang Sun-guk suggested to the main character, you said you're a necromancer, right? Then summon something. If something happens, at least you can save yourself. Back to Dong-hun, he realized he might be about to face a threat even greater than an S-rank hunter. His eyes widened in shock as he hastily summoned his 5 skeleton minions to act as a shield, and of course half of his energy reserve was instantly vaporized by the summon. Over here, Kang Sun-guk was a little disappointed seeing Dong-hun could only summon a few small fry soldiers. Skeletons, don't you have anything stronger? No, this is all I have. Dong-hun shook his head. Suddenly, an immense pressure slammed down on both of them, making Dong-hun scream out, Guide! What's happening? Dong-hun asked frantically. Damn it, just keep moving. There's an open area ahead, Kang Sun-guk roared. What's so special about an open area? Dong-hun asked. I don't know, but I can feel the presence of something. If someone's there, it means this place is habitable. Right, a presence. How should I know? Could be the previous team, or it could be monsters. Just move? Kang Sun-guk screamed frantically, as the main character asked a ton of questions. And so as time passed, the two of them endured the crushing pressure on their bodies. They struggled to move forward. Damn it! I can't even open my eyes or my mouth, Dong-hun thought to himself. Hearing his master's inner voice, Skeleton 5 behind him used the air shield skill on him. However, the moment the shield was formed, it shattered without lasting even a second. And after that, Dong-hun even coughed up a mouthful of blood from the backlash. This is insane. The pressure is strong enough to break a skill the instant it's used. The poor guy struggled to think. With no other choice, his skeletons had to run over and help him forward, while that old man Kang Sun-guk was already a good distance ahead of him. Kang Sun-guk is already that far ahead. What does this even mean? A new dungeon that appeared in Peru turns out to be a super difficult one that makes even an S-rank hunter tense. I want to forget becoming an S-rank hunter for now. First, I just need to survive to even think about that. Thinking this, Dong-hun could only grit his teeth and endure. As time went on with the help of his minions, Dong-hun's entire body passed through some kind of barrier. He entered a separate area, and the moment he stepped into this space, all the pressure on his body completely vanished. Notification. You have reached Stage 1, the resentful white-haired old man. Back to our main character. The notification with its confusing message appeared, making Dong-hun's face look like he'd been constipated for 3 years. What the hell? The resentful white-haired old man. Now what is this? He wondered to himself, and to answer his question, the system offered some guidance. His resentment is so deep that frost covers his hair. Enter the room and defeat the old man. Back to Dong-hun reading this, even a cow could figure out what he needed to do. So that white-haired old man must be the final boss of this dungeon, he thought. He was still wondering whether he should enter the room to challenge the boss monster, when another voice suddenly rang out beside him. A human. The hunters have finally arrived. Are you from Reinforcement Team 1? A man with a scarf wrapped around his head asked eagerly. Beside him stood two other teammates. Looking at their gaunt, emaciated forms, it seemed the group had been trapped here for quite some time. But were they the group of hunters who managed to avoid the pressure and make it here? Dong-hun wondered, unable to be sure. These hunters looked at the A-rank insignia on Kang Sun-guk's hip and nearly wept with joy. A purple emblem. An A-rank hunter. And those skeletons? That must be a 1,000,000-soul necromancer. This is the rescue team for sure. Please save us. Get us out of here. But first, could we have some food or water? We're so thirsty. Hearing this, Kang Sun-guk nodded and spoke softly to Dong-hun. Whew. Distribute the emergency rations first. I find it a little distasteful that you ran off to save yourself, but I guess I have to understand. Because that's just how dungeons are. He said quietly to himself, then quickly distributed the emergency food to the three of them. Next, looking at their starved, ghostly appearance, Dong-hun had to remind himself one wrong decision, and I could end up just like them. He turned back to Kang Sun-guk after waiting for the three hunters to eat, drink, and recover a little before the man began to question them. All right. Calm down, eat slowly. Can you explain what happened here? Is that possible? In response, the man in the scarf turned to answer. I'll speak for my team. As you can see, I'm a B-rank hunter among the survivors here. I'm the highest-ranked one, but this place is a hell. I've been a hunter for a long time, but I've never encountered a dungeon as strange as this one. Strange, you say? Kang Sun-guk asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, that's right. Just look around. There's no exit from the starting point. No matter which direction you go, this cave will always lead you back to this door. After that, we were bound by this aura, and we couldn't leave at all. In the end, all we could do here was face whatever was behind that door, nothing else. But the condition to get past it is just too insane. How could a human possibly defeat that thing? A resentful old man with white hair, right? He's too strong, we can't beat him. Whether we were D rank, C rank, or even B rank, we were like newborn babies in front of that old man. But maybe if it's an A rank hunter, the result will surely be different. You can definitely get us out of this hell. Right. As he spoke, all three hunters looked at Kang Sun-guk with eyes full of expectation, rendering the man speechless, not knowing what to say. Because even though he was a hunter, his main job was being a guide, so his combat power couldn't be expected to be as high as other hunters of the same rank. As for Dong-hun, after listening for a while, he voiced his question. Wait a minute. If the boss monster is as strong as you say, then how are you all still alive? In response to the question, Kang Sun-guk's eyes lit up with delight, and he slapped his thigh. Excellent question. What's surprising is, that old man doesn't kill people. He only accepts challengers and he conducts some kind of trial. We don't know the specific details of the trial. He just subdues us in a painful and terrifying way, and then he clicks his tongue, shakes his head, and says, "This one is not suitable," before throwing us back out. Thinking of the old man's heaven-shakingly painful blows, the group trembled with fear while Dong-hun, after listening curiously, glanced towards the door. What is this, a boss monster that doesn't kill its challengers? What kind of dungeon is this? He asked with curiosity, before the man with the scarf, as if remembering something, scratched his head and added, "It's a bit strange, right?" Now that I think about it, an old man means a human, right? This is the first time a dungeon boss has been a human since the world changed. He said it so casually, but for Dong-hun and Kang Sun-guk, this news was like a lightning bolt striking them straight in the brain. The final boss is human. Could this be real? No matter what, we have to open that door and complete the mission to find the exit. But I don't trust Kang Sun-guk with this, because he's a hunter who only specializes in navigation. What should I do now? Dong-hun slightly furrowed his brow, his pensive eyes full of doubt stroking his chin thoughtfully as he tried to find a way. The best solution in this stalemate. Just then, at the same time, the surprised voice of the S-rank hunter Suyun rang out. "Kang, what are you doing here?" Hearing this, the entire group turned to look at them in unison. After a few minutes passed, the three newcomers quickly got the gist of the story. All right. We should go in right away. Based on their auras, these survivors aren't fakes or a trap. What bothers me is how intense their auras are. But we can't just sit here forever. Right, Sujun said with a smile while the three unfamiliar hunters cheered joyfully like children. Whoa, we're saved. 3 A-rank hunters and 1 S-rank hunter. Oh my God, I'm so moved. She's from the Parang Guild, right? From now on, I'll bow towards the Parang Guild headquarters every morning, having no time to pay them any mind. Sujun turned towards the gate. The supporters and survivors stay here. We'll handle this. From behind, Donghun watched Sujun make such a quick and precise decision, a look of admiration appearing in his eyes. An S-rank hunter is truly on a completely different level than an A-rank. Not only that, she's also one of the top 1,000 hunters. Back to Sujun standing in front of the wooden door, she paused for a beat. All right, let's go. Everyone get ready. After saying that, Sujun slowly opened the door and stepped inside. Meanwhile, our protagonist was casually waiting for them to finish the job so he could collect his reward and go home. But things never go as smoothly as he wants. Not long after they entered the room, a loud noise suddenly came from inside. Following that, 2 people, Fai Kim and Xiaolong, were thrown outside. Oh, it hurts. Damn it, the red-haired guy said through gritted teeth. And it wasn't just the 2 of them. A second later, even the hunter Sujun, Aisha, was thrown out of the room. Back with Donghun, he saw the powerful hunting party that had entered the room full of vigor now lying on the ground groaning. He really couldn't understand what they had just gone through. What the hell is this? It hasn't even been 10 minutes since they went inside. Even an S-rank hunter was taken down just like that. Over here, Sujun seemed unwilling to accept that she had failed just like that. Her eyes held a hint of madness like a gambling addict. Unsuitable me. That's ridiculous, supporter. Give me a high-grade potion from your bag. I'm going back in there, she said, holding her hand out towards Donghun. Hearing Sujun say this, Donghun's mind felt a bit chaotic. He couldn't understand what this woman was talking about. What? She still wants to go back in after being beaten like that? With that thought, he quietly asked, Are you sure? Yes. Like the survivors said, the old man didn't kill me. He just subdued me in a painful way. I've made up my mind. I have to show him, then he'll see whether I'm really suitable or not, Sujun said in frustration as she opened the recovery potion. Back to Donghun after hearing those words. He vaguely guessed the old man's purpose. Suitable? Isn't that the term usually used when a master is looking for a disciple? If that's the case, does the old man's resentment stem from not being able to find a successor? Suitable. It can't be. I'm going in again. After speaking, Sujun casually tossed the empty bottle behind her. And so Ji Sujun's endless challenge began. Yes, as time went on. Donghun had lost count of how many times. Sujun had been thrown out of the room. Oh, this is so frustrating. What the hell does that hateful old man want from me? I thought he was only good at swordsmanship, but he's also very skilled with a spear. Let's see who wins this time. As Sujun spoke, veins were already popping on her face. For Sujun, this challenge seemed to be more than just a battle. It was a war of perseverance, of pride, and a mad refusal to be defeated. But just like that, one day passed, then a second, a third, and even on the 4th day, Sujun never stopped challenging herself. She kept entering that door and was continuously sent flying out in an endless loop. Every time she fell, she would grit her teeth and get back up, her eyes burning with determination. However, after being mercilessly defeated countless times, no matter how strong her spirit was, Sujun's will began to waver as the door opened and then slammed shut again. A figure was thrown out so forcefully that dust billowed. Sujun staggered to her feet, her face etched with exhaustion and helplessness, pointing a trembling hand towards the door. She screamed in anger, "That old man, who the hell is he? How can someone like that also use magic? How am I supposed to get past this?" Her voice was hoarse, a mixture of anger, despair, and utter helplessness. Behind her, Donghun stood silently observing, seeing an S-rank hunter like her fail repeatedly. He knew the situation was really bad. This is big trouble. Donghun muttered, his gaze thoughtful and filled with worry. Even if he called the entire Padang Guild for backup, the problem would just continue. He looked up at the mysterious door, an indescribable fear rising within him. No. I have a feeling that even if 2 or even 5 of the top leaders came here, they still wouldn't be able to defeat that old man. Donghun sighed heavily. The atmosphere became unbelievably tense and suffocating. Amidst the biting cold of consecutive failures, he realized this wasn't simply a test of strength anymore. Who on earth was the man behind that door, and what did he really want? Back to Soo-jun after she had shouted out some of her frustrations, she had calmed down a bit. All right, I admit it. That old man is truly strong, incredibly strong, but as long as I'm alive, I will continue to challenge him. She said, her eyes filled with determination, but meanwhile, Dong-hoon looked at her determined face and couldn't hide his amazement. Ah, is this the mentality of a top leader? But if we can't clear the dungeon, the survivors will start to struggle. Plus, I feel so uneasy. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Come to think of it, all the hunters here have gone through that door and come back. I'm the only one who hasn't tried. Thinking this even though I don't believe I can actually win, it wouldn't kill me to try once. So Dong-hoon stood up and walked towards the door. Seeing this, a surprised Soo-jun asked, "What is it, supporter?" "I think I should give it a try inside," he stated his purpose. "Excuse me." Soo-jun's voice was filled with disbelief while the mocking sound of the red-haired guy rang out beside them. "Did I hear that right? A supporter wants to enter a dungeon where even a top leader has failed. I thought you were just a rookie necromancer who can only summon a few skeletons. Right now you should act like a supporter and just be the bag carrier. Know your place?" After he spoke, perhaps getting beaten so much had made the poodle-haired guy irritable. He even slightly drew his sword from its sheath to threaten Dong-hoon, who stood there, his face pale. Sweat started to bead on his forehead. He had never thought of confronting an A-rank hunter, and it was clear this red-haired guy wasn't joking. Luckily for him, Hunter Soo-jun didn't let him get away with it. "Stop it!" Soo-jun's voice rang out full of stern and decisive authority that made the red-haired guy, whether he wanted to or not, sheathe his sword. Then she sighed and turned to Dong-hoon. "Why is it because you don't trust me?" "No, it's not like that at all." The protagonist gently shook his head. "According to the initial contract, you're a supporter. You're not allowed to give opinions on dungeon exploration," Soo-jun reminded him. "I understand that," Dong-hoon said. "Then may I ask why you want to try?" Soo-jun asked curiously, hearing that Dong-hoon shared his deductions. "That old man said he's looking for a suitable person. I think his resentment might be related. Shawshank to finding a worthy disciple. And a worthy disciple implies potential. They don't necessarily have to be perfect. In other words, he's not talking about one's current level." After hearing this, Soo-jun's face grew thoughtful. "Oh, so you mean you want the old man to become your master instead of defeating him?" "It might be the hidden condition to clear the dungeon." Dong-hoon nodded. "A hidden condition. Sometimes a dungeon can be completed in other ways." Back to Soo-jun, it was as if she sensed that the solution Dong-hoon had proposed could actually work. So she asked, "A hidden condition, huh? Let's assume you're right. How do you plan to become his disciple? Are you saying you have more potential than me?" she said, raising an eyebrow while the red-haired mutt beside her stared daggers at him, looking like he could bite his head off at any moment. "Looks like things are getting more intense," Dong-hoon muttered, then said aloud, "Oh, I highly doubt that. But..." Before he could finish his sentence, Soo-jun took a step forward and cut him off. "Even so, you're not denying it, are you? No, you've misunderstood me. Pain? Yes, pain. It's something everyone has experienced. Except for me. I feel like an outsider here. Besides, aren't you supposed to be resting right now?" Dong-hoon explained, flustered. Seeing him like this, Soo-jun couldn't help but crack a smile which eased the tense atmosphere a bit. Then Soo-jun's smile faded as she said, "Yes, that's the look. You're finally showing your true colors. I knew it from the start. You know I said you were suspicious. You have the eyes of a starving wolf stalking its prey, so you're aiming for the dungeon's reward, aren't you? You're hoping for some lucky encounter during this raid." From behind, Dong-hoon's face went numb as he heard her words. This person, she should be a fortune teller, not a leader. How can she read people so quickly? Just by looking at them. I don't get it. As if hearing Dong-hoon's thoughts, Soo-jun continued casually, "Well, go on, give it a try. There's no other solution anyway, and like you said, I want to rest. So this works out for me. Besides, I have no right to say anything. I've already failed after all." "Really?" Dong-hoon asked hastily. "Yes, but you only get one chance. As you can see, our emergency rations are almost gone and the rescue team isn't coming. That means we need to finish this as soon as possible." "I understand. Thank you." Our protagonist bowed his head after getting permission to fight the old man inside. Then he took a deep breath. He slowly approached the door, his face tense, and the moment he opened it and stepped inside, a blast of cold air shot out from the room, hitting Dong-hoon and making his whole body tremble. Then, as he went deeper into the room, suddenly he collapsed to his knees, unable to stop himself. Ahead of him, the figure of an old man in ancient clothing spoke up. "What is this?" First a shabby girl who kept coming back, and now someone even more pathetic. "Ch! This wretch isn't even worth my gaze. I should dispose of you immediately." As he spoke, a dangerous glint appeared in his eyes, causing Dong-hoon's instincts to scream at him to get away from this old man. Notification. You are facing the memory of a cursed soul. Hidden condition has been met. This is a hidden condition for the unique authority, Cursed Necromancer, encountering the memory of a cursed soul. Notification. The last of 1,000,000 necromancers shall rule the dead. Encounter a cursed soul with strong determination. Notification. Congratulations. A hidden skill has been unlocked. You have received Memory Recreation S rank. Notification. You are using the S rank skill, Memory Recreation. As soon as the notification ended, the space around Dong-hoon suddenly turned gray and the strange old man's movements stopped. It was as if time had frozen. The pressure he had been exerting on our protagonist also vanished, allowing his body to move normally again. Am I using a skill? Come to think of it, the old man said he was going to dispose of me, but he didn't do anything. What is this? He wondered to himself before another system notification appeared. Recreating the memory of the cursed soul, Grand Master of Techniques. You will be transferred immediately. As it spoke, the yellow notification screen suddenly emitted a blinding light, making Dong-hoon raise a hand to shield his eyes. Next, when the light faded, a light. Our protagonist found himself standing in a snowy landscape. Not far away, the strange old man stood alone, a sorrowful expression on his face. "Ha! Why are there no suitable candidates? But to leave it all behind is such a waste. A meaningless life. I worked so hard to get to where I am, and now I'm being told to just give it all up." His voice was filled with ridicule, whether for himself or for someone else it was unclear. While he was rambling, Dong-hoon took the chance to look around. And he thought, is this another world? Do other worlds really exist? As he thought this, a sudden headache hit him, making him grimace. This feeling. Are these the old man's emotions and memories? Unaware of Dong-hoon's presence, the old man continued his monologue. Ho ho! It was still a rather interesting life. Swordsman, spearman, assassin, archer, mage, enhancer, healer, and more. Once you know how to master the flow of ki, all techniques become one. Now drinking cold water is like swallowing poison. And the air that was once gentle now feels like it's trying to crush me. The pain is killing me. It's so painful, so agonizing, and I'm so thirsty, but I can't die like this. That's right. To die now would be too unjust. As he thought this, it seemed he still had some lingering desire. To be continued? The old man's hands clenched, his eyes turning bloodshot like a martial artist on the verge of chi deviation. Oh, the agony. I just wanted to find a single disciple, so that I could pass on this power. How could I fail to find a single person with enough talent? Was the idea of a soul successor just my own meaningless greed? Please, I can't pass on like this. I can't pass. I would sell my soul just to pass on everything I am. As he spoke, tears streamed down the old man's face, and after uttering his last words, he collapsed to the ground and died. At the same time, the system announced that the memory recreation skill had ended, and Dong-hoon was booted back to the dungeon. As soon as he returned, the pressure emanating from the old man once again began to crush him, forcing his body to kneel before him again. The master of techniques is staring at you. He lightly placed a hand on his own heart, which was pounding from the stress. Dong-hoon muttered, "Looks like I'm back. This feeling is suffocating. But I've seen a glimmer of hope." Even though he was scared shitless through that memory, Dong-hoon seemed to have found a way to handle this. Turning back to the old man, seeing a smile spread across the protagonist's face, the old man remarked with interest, You can see my soul." An interesting one. In response to this, the protagonist struggled to prop up his trembling body and answered, "Yes, I did." He also reminded himself, if this old man is truly searching for a disciple, if there's someone who can inherit his vast power and knowledge, then that person has to be me. Although the strange old man had some interest in Dong-hoon that was as far as it went, in his eyes he couldn't see a single shred of talent coming from the protagonist. He simply raised his hand and shook his head. All right. Beyond being slightly interesting, there's nothing else to you. You're worthless. You lack everything required to contain my techniques. As he spoke, he released just a sliver of his aura, and the protagonist's entire body felt as heavy as lead as he realized he was about to be kicked out of the room. Dong-hun hurriedly tried to persuade him, "No, Elder. If you continue like this, you will never find your disciple. You'll remain a ghost, unable to resolve your resentment forever. People will only remember you as a stubborn, obstinate spirit." The young man yelled at the Supreme Master, but even a saint has their limits, and a man who had reached the pinnacle of fame like this old man couldn't help but be angered by these words. "Insolent brat, I spared an ant like you out of my infinite generosity. Do I need to break one of your legs to snap you back to your senses?" As he spoke, he reached his hand forward once more as if to teach Dong-hun a lesson about how the weak shouldn't talk so big. There was no hint of the joke in his expression. Sweat dripped down Dong-hun's face. "No, Elder, please listen to me. You have mastered every technique, but the people of this world have struggled their entire lives just to master a single one," he yelled. The old man's hand froze in midair. The room was suddenly plunged into silence. 2 seconds later, the old man's abyss-like eyes locked onto Dong-hun as he said, "That's impossible. The world is vast and time is long. Surely there must be many geniuses like me." Back to Dong-hun. He knew this stubborn old man would be hard to convince without any proof. That's why he pointed towards the door. "Sir, take a look at the woman who just came in here. Would you believe that she's one of the most powerful people in this world?" The old man froze, his sharp gaze turning towards the door Dong-hun had just pointed to. "That woman is one of the most powerful people in this world, you say?" he mumbled, looking as if he were deep in thought. The room remained sunken in silence, the heavy atmosphere feeling as if it had frozen solid. Meanwhile, Dong-hun continued to rack his brain for a way to persuade the stubborn old man. "To think my ultimate goal was once someone like Jisoo Jun. This old man's reaction is just disheartening," Dong-hun lamented internally. But regardless, he's already taken the bait. However, before Dong-hun could say another word, the old man in front of him gritted his teeth and shook his head, his voice booming like thunder. "Impossible! How could she possibly be one of the strongest with that level of skill? You're trying to fool me, aren't you?" His face flushed with anger, his eyes like two flames boring into Dong-hun. Dong-hun took a deep breath, his face pale from the tension as beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. He clenched his fists and stared straight into the old man's abyss-like eyes. "Look into my eyes. Do I look like a liar?" Dong-hun's voice trembled slightly, but his gaze was unwavering. "I know you're powerful enough to tell if I'm lying." After he spoke, the room plunged into a suffocating silence. The old man silently observed Dong-hun, his sharp gaze seeming to pierce right through to his soul. Each passing second felt like a century, and all Dong-hun could do was brace himself, enduring the incredible pressure weighing down on his body. Then the old man finally spoke. "You really are serious. What a shame." His voice was filled with disappointment. Meanwhile, Dong-hun gritted his teeth and made a proposal of his own. "Elder, if no one can meet your standards, why don't you consider using me?" "Using you?" he asked. "That's right. Pass your abilities on to me." Hearing the main character say such a thing, the old man was so angry he actually laughed. "Are you saying I should take you as my disciple? I thought you were impudent before, but now you've shown yourself to be utterly shameless. I'd rather teach garbage than teach you." He flatly refused, but Dong-hun was well aware of his own talents, and so he had a plan to deal with this, a way to counter this. "Listen, I'm not asking you to teach me directly," he said while checking his own status window to make sure nothing was out of the ordinary. Then Dong-hun used his skill to summon his skeletons and began to introduce his subordinates to the old man. "As the elder, sir, surely you can see their potential, right?" Having said his piece, Dong-hun nervously awaited his answer while the incredibly powerful old martial artist silently evaluated the skeletons before him. Could it be that these skeletons have limitless potential, and with potential like that? After about 10 seconds of observation with still no word from the old man, Dong-hun continued his sales pitch. "They all have different special abilities which will make it easier for you to teach them. You wanted a single successor, didn't you? Well, you don't have to worry. Even if all of them grow stronger, I will be the only one to inherit everything. What do you think these undead beings can develop? They feel no pain, so their endurance is greater than anyone's. And they're harder to defeat because they know no fear." Back with the old master, the main character's words had truly struck a chord with him. How interesting. And ironic. The successor I've been searching for isn't a human but one of the undead. Their potential is truly immense. They must have been exceptional warriors when they were alive. I have always wanted disciples like these. Why have they only appeared now? Teaching many at once will be a little difficult, but very well. I suppose I'll have it a compromise. As he spoke, streams of spiritual energy began to pour from the old master's body, changing the space around them. It transformed into the snowy mountain landscape from before. At the same time, a notification appeared in front of Dong-hun. You have fulfilled the hidden condition. This is the hidden condition for Phase 1. The resentful white-haired elder. Condition earn his recognition. To be acknowledged by the transcendent master of all techniques from another world, you must reach a certain level. And persuade him. At that moment ahead of him, the old man's form of flesh and blood was now fully revealed before Dong-hun. I will trust your words. I will trust the determination in your eyes, so promise me that no matter what trials you must face, you will inherit everything I possess, that you will leave my mark somewhere in this world. With a trembling body, I replied, swearing I wouldn't miss the only chance I'd ever get in my life. I will inherit everything, no matter the cost. Very good. The old man nodded, satisfied with his attitude. Congratulations, you have passed the first stage. That white-haired man? Who knows how much time had passed? When Dong-hun finally opened his eyes, he was staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. A look of confusion spread across his face as he tried to figure out what was going on. Seeing him wake up, Soo-jun, who had been waiting at his side, spoke up. So you're finally awake. You're Ji-Soo-jun. His voice faltered with uncertainty. He couldn't understand why such a high-ranking person would be personally looking after him like this. Then looking down at his clothes, Dong-hun realized he must be in a hospital. However, he couldn't remember how he'd gotten here at all. Before he could wonder for too long, Soo-jun spoke up. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Ji-Soo-jun, Vice Guildmaster of the Parang Guild. I'm also known as the Queen of Shadows, she said. She then gave him a look full of contempt, making him gulp nervously, afraid he'd somehow offended the powerful woman. I knew that, but why are you in my room? I can't remember what happened after clearing the dungeon. I must have passed out. Dong-hun thought, trying to jog his memory, but the last thing he could recall was the moment he made that promise to the old master. Seeing the utterly baffled look on his face, Soo-jun's expression turned a little awkward. I'm honestly very surprised. I really thought that thing was unbeatable. But who would have guessed that a support class would be the one to clear that dungeon? As she spoke, she stared at Dong-hun with eyes full of suspicion, as if trying to see right through him and figure out what on earth he did in there, feeling accused. Dong-hun flinched and asked weakly, Why? Why are you looking at me like that? She didn't answer his question. Soo-jun's eyes narrowed, making the atmosphere in the room even more tense. Seeing this, Dong-hun quickly raised his hands and corrected himself. I was just wondering why the vice master of a major guild would come looking for me. After about 2 seconds of silence, Soo-jun finally replied, Isn't it obvious? Because I'm also curious how you managed to clear that bizarre dungeon. And what reward did you receive? Did you really become that old man's disciple? With that, she calmly sat down beside him. As for Dong-hun, he didn't rush to answer. Her question was reasonable. That dungeon belonged to her, and he'd only had one shot at it. From her perspective, he was just some nobody who suddenly appeared and stole her victory. A more aggressive leader would have probably had him killed and taken the loot for themselves. The thought that something like that could have happened made Dong-hun clench the blanket in anger at his own weakness. Or perhaps he'd just been too careless. Seeing Dong-hun just sitting there lost in thought, Soo-jun frowned and asked again, What are you thinking so hard about support? Her voice snapped Dong-hun out of his thoughts. He turned to her, forcing an awkward smile, and said, Before I answer your question, Queen of Shadows, could you tell me what the press is saying about this dungeon expedition? As he finished, he couldn't hide the worry on his face. His eyes were fixed on Soo-jun, anxiously awaiting her answer. But she didn't disappoint him. She offered him some reassurance. Relax. I think I know what you're worried about, but there's no need. We reported that the Parang Guild's Vanguard team successfully cleared the dungeon and had all survivors sign non-disclosure agreements. Hearing this, the main character's face lit up as all his worries suddenly vanished. That means the public doesn't know I was the one who cleared the dungeon, he thought. He didn't forget to thank Soo-jun for the Parang Guild covering everything up. He bowed his head and said seriously, Thank you for your concern. Queen of Shadows, T. Sujin was a bit surprised by his respectful and polite attitude. She looked at him a little differently. You're more mature than I thought, support. Most hunters would be willing to kill just to show off their achievements to the world. For me, it's safety is what matters most. Safety first, safety last. Dong-hun laughed wryly, and right after he said that, Sujin's voice turned serious as she got to the main point. Then there's no needs to thank me. This is a matter of the Parang Guild's honor, too. Who would believe that a support was the MVP of the raid? How could an E-rank mercenary possibly outperform a team leader? Sujun's words made Dong-hun's expression stiffen slightly. A bitter thought crossed his mind. I get it. They're keeping it a secret because they find it embarrassing, and if I reveal the truth to the world, I might be dealt with in some discreet way. As he thought of this, something occurred to him, and he called out, Queen of Shadows? Yes, what is it, support? Go ahead and ask. Sojin replied, How long was I unconscious for? Dong-hun asked. Let's see. It's been 3 days since you got out of the dungeon. About that long. She replied calmly, but that number made Dong-hun's face scrunch up. Damn it, I was out for that long. Anyway, this was a lucky break thanks to Sujun, but I shouldn't say too much about the reward. It might cause trouble for me. He reminded himself, then calmed down and continued speaking. I'm really grateful that you're looking out for me, but to be honest, I still don't have a clear picture of what happened. I don't even fully understand the reward I received. I think I'll need a little time to answer your question. Is that so? Sujun's voice was calm, but for some reason Dong-hun got the feeling she didn't really believe him, even though she was right not to. He then let out a few embarrassed coughs. Just give me some time to think. And don't worry about me trying to escape. I know no hunter in the world can escape the watchful eye of the Queen of Shadows. Sujun's expression became thoughtful, as if she were weighing Dong-hun's words. After a few seconds, she made her decision. All right, thank you. I'll come back once you have a better grasp of the situation. In that case, thank you for everything, Dong-hun said with a smile, continuing until Sujin had left the room entirely. Only then did his body go limp, collapsing onto the bed. All the tension seemed to melt away. And then, as he lay there, staring at the ceiling, our hero finally had a moment to process everything in his head. Damn, my life has been insane lately. A late awakening after 3 years, meeting a team leader, and then running into that bizarre dungeon. Plus, I could end up in a really awkward spot with the Parang Guild if I'm not careful. On the other hand, I could also build a good relationship with them. As he considered this, unsure if this would be a blessing or a curse, a system notification suddenly appeared, reminding him to check his rewards. Oh right, I passed out before I could check my rewards. Dong-hun thought to himself and quickly hit the accept button. A series of notifications popped up in front of him. Receiving rewards. Congratulations. Your energy has been permanently increased by 20. You have acquired the skill Teach All Arts S-Rank. Another S-Rank skill. Dong-hun's eyes flew wide open before his entire body started trembling with pure joy, as if he were having a seizure. Ha ha ha! This is insane! So this is why veteran hunters get so addicted to clearing dungeons. As he spoke, he focused on the S-Rank skill, Memory Recreation, which allowed him to read the memories of the dead. Dong-hun mulled over its effect. What's this? It seems like a hidden skill. I'm glad I was able to read the old master's memories with this skill. It's not that impressive, though. Still, I'm sure I'll find a way to use it eventually. All right, next, he said. He quickly turned his attention to the other S-Rank skill. Teach All Arts S-Rank. Effect 1 consumes 20 energy to summon the Master of Arts who conquered another world for 60 minutes. Effect 2, the Master of Arts cannot exert any physical force in this world. He can only pass on his knowledge within a limited time. Effect 3. The cooldown for this skill is 24 hours. Effect 4. Only the skill user, the skill, can see the Master of Arts. After reading the skill's description, even a complete idiot could understand just how precious this skill was. Without a moment of hesitation, Dong-hun threw on some clothes and ran straight to his usual training ground. There, he immediately tried using the Teach All Arts S-Rank skill. An orb of energy appeared before him, and from within it, the old master stepped out and said cheerfully, "You've finally arrived, kid." Seeing the old master appear, Dong-hun's face lit up with joy. However, he didn't even get a chance to give him a hug. As a warm welcome, the old master punched him on the head. "Are you an idiot? You promised to transfer everything, so why did you only call me now, huh? If you're this lazy, you'll never be able to keep up. As he spoke, the old master's eyes seemed to burn with a furious flame, and to cool the old man down, old Donghun had to explain his situation. Wait a minute, sir, I called you as soon as I woke up. After saying that he remembered the description of this summon soul skill, Donghun was a little bewildered. Wait a minute. Aside from that, isn't this old man supposed to be unable to physically affect this world? How could he hit me? He thought this, and the confusion was written all over his face. Naturally, the old master could read him like a book, and so, the master just clicked his tongue twice and shook his head. Tisk, tisk. As I said, you still have a long, long way to go. Look at you, your expression is so easy to read. You and I are connected spiritually. You tell me. Do you really think I have to worry about whether it'll hurt when I interact with you? Anyway, since you've called me here, we should start right away. There's no more time. The old master's attitude was filled with urgency. It seemed that after waiting for so long, he couldn't hold it in any longer. He wanted to immediately pass on his skills to our hero as long as he could endure the suffering. Ah, yes. So now I just need to summon the skeleton, right? Donghun asked. No, that's not necessary. First, let's decide what you're going to learn today. I already have a firm grasp of the other 10 people's talents. The problem now is you. As the old master spoke, he pointed his index finger straight at Donghun's face, making the boy's eyes widen as if he was about to meet his doom. Why am I the problem? Is this old geezer going to lecture me again? He sighed internally. And while he was still wondering, the old master began to knock some sense into him. Do you know why I am called the Grand Master of Skills? No, I earned that nickname after learning and perfecting countless talents. Did you think I only have a few things to teach? The rest depends on how you learn. As he said this, the old master chuckled aloud. His expression was a little crazed, making goosebumps break out all over Donghun's body. Then, thinking of his own aptitude, he asked, As you've said before, my talent is trash. Before he could finish his sentence, the old master slammed his foot on the ground and yelled. The sound made Donghun flinch. Silence. Since you made a promise to me, you must inherit my skills. If you can't do it, then you just have to keep trying until you can. I can use one of my techniques to turn trash into a genius, and it's a good thing I can physically affect you. Hearing him say these words, our hero's biological alarm bells started ringing non-stop, making his entire body tremble like a small lamb before a lion. And then, also, as if he had frightened his disciple enough. The old master stroked his beard and continued, Fortunately, there are a few techniques I created that I've never had a chance to use. Your frozen meridians can be opened with qi, and your physical constitution will improve if it's massaged for 300 days. It'll be quite painful, though. But I've noticed you're quite persistent, so I'm sure it will be fine. The old master said nonchalantly. No excuse me, I'm the one who owns this body. Why are you so cheerfully making a prediction like that? Our hero cried out in his heart and whispered meekly, Sir, I don't think my heart is ready for this. In response, the old man put on a face that looked like he wanted to eat him alive. He immediately fell silent. Do you have any idea how many people wanted to become my disciple in the world I came from? It's called the Great Technique of the Ancient Artisan. This is an art I created in my final years after giving it much thought, the old master declared grandly. Meanwhile, the more the old man talked, the more confused Donghun became. If there's such a powerful technique, why didn't he use it sooner? It's a technique that can turn trash into a genius after all. If that's the case, couldn't he just have grabbed any random person and completed his search for a disciple already? That's what he was thinking. But because he didn't want to get hit, Donghun didn't dare say it out loud. Too bad for him, the old master has been around the block a few more times than he has. That little thought of his. So how can I possibly escape the old man's gaze? Of course, I can see exactly what you're thinking. With this technique, I have to use my own life force as the price. What do you think would happen if I were to change a disciple with no aptitude and enhance his talent? At that point, my body would melt away and disappear. Hearing the price, Donghun got a little worried and asked, So what about now? In response, the old master shrugged and admitted, Well, I'm already a goner, so it'll probably be fine, haha. What a carefree way of thinking. Donghun let out a strained laugh before asking his next question. Then let me ask you one more thing. Why couldn't you use that technique on the others who challenged you? You would have been a goner much sooner that way. he asked naively, and his master immediately gifted him another punch to the head. This idiot! When I tell you something, you don't even understand its true meaning. You really are talentless, he said, gritting his teeth, seething with frustration. I already told you, didn't I? This is a technique that can turn trash into a genius. It would be meaningless if it wasn't used on trash. It's only useful if the target is on the level of actual garbage. It won't have any effect on those who aren't at that level. After all, their bodies have already been influenced by other energies. But compared to them, your body is very clean and very weak. Although you have the ability to summon the undead, has it changed your body? Not to mention, this is only the second best method. After all, a natural-born genius is still more impressive than an artificial one. From the start, I intended to find candidates with potential. More impressive than you. But before he could finish, Dong-hoon's fragile little heart could no longer bear it hearing the old man say that he was chosen, entirely because he was pathetic enough. Stop, stop! I understand, he replied weakly. However, Dong-hoon quickly accepted reality. His words were harsh, but they were still true. I wonder if I can get even stronger beyond just having these skeletons. It's like killing two birds with one stone. Thinking about how he was about to go from an ugly duckling to a swan becoming a super genius, a look of anticipation appeared on his face. Picking up on this, the old master also smiled and asked, So are you ready? Yes, sir, Dong-hoon answered confidently. But a few minutes later, after the body purification process began, Dong-hoon was already feeling a bit of regret. Wait a minute, it hurts so much. His terrified scream echoed while Dong-hoon repeatedly slammed his hands on the ground, begging for it to stop. Behind him, the old master didn't seem to hear any of it. Instead, his two hands were still continuously striking the pressure points on the young man's back. Why are you overreacting like that? I haven't even really started yet. After speaking, he began to move his hands like a machine, leaving trails of afterimages lingering around. And under the impact of these two hands, Dong-hoon's whole body was drenched in sweat. It felt as if his bones were being crushed, every muscle bundle torn apart and regenerated, causing him so much pain he could pass out. At any moment, I have to persevere. If I want to become number one, I have to at least endure this. But this is just the beginning, he wondered to himself as at that moment, a single second felt as long as a century. Behind him, the old master saw that Dong-hoon was still able to persevere, so he didn't spare any praise for him. You really do have a lot of guts. Very good. In that case, I'm going to increase the speed. With that, the old master's hand speed increased by 30%, causing Dong-hoon's pain to become even more intense as he screamed, This is crazy! Endure it. I have to endure it. Dong-hoon reminded himself through gritted teeth. And in his daze, after an unknown amount of time had passed, a notification appeared before him. Notification. You have received the skill, Pain Resistance Rank C. This skill has great potential for growth. Behind him, after delivering a decisive palm strike, Dong-hoon's entire body collapsed forward. At that moment, his entire body was as limp as a noodle. And that's that. The great technique. You endured it very well. Even though you're just trash, you can withstand quite a lot. If you have the desire to become strong and the mental fortitude and perseverance to endure it, then you're not completely useless. The master nodded in acknowledgement. So, is that everything for today? Dong-hoon asked weakly. What are you talking about? We still have 30 minutes left. As he spoke, the master lifted Dong-hoon's body with one hand and pointed to the skeleton soldiers who had been watching since earlier. So you thought all you were getting today was a massage? Is that all, model? Aren't those skeletons waiting for you? Looking at the minions lined up beside him, Dong-hoon's eyes started to well up. That's right. I'm really done for. Back with the old master after he had finished unblocking Dong-hoon's energy channels, he began training him along with the entire group of skeleton soldiers. The master's words started to echo, echoing in the silent space. The foundation of any profession is physical strength, and it seems even these skeletons can develop that, even without muscles. So let's begin with the proper stance. This is the horse stance I frequently used when I was alive. A human's muscles are concentrated in the lower body, so building a solid foundation is the key. The key to developing strength and stability. As he spoke, the old master's knees bent slightly while he slowly brought his hands forward, fingertips touching tips. And as for this stance, the old master and his minions, being skeletons, obviously wouldn't feel a thing. The only one suffering was Dong-hun. He was already dead tired from the cleansing process earlier, and now he has to hold a horse stance. This is exhausting. He just finished torturing me, and now he's making me hold this pose. As he thought this, his whole body trembled uncontrollably from exhaustion. The old man in front watched his incredibly unstable stance and shook his head, disapprovingly. As I said, you have no talent. However, you do possess one thing: perseverance. Moreover, a sage cannot be weaker than the beings he has summoned. The old man advised him earnestly. After listening, Dong-hun could only manage a strained smile. I know. That's why I'm trying my absolute best to endure this, you old geezer. But my muscles feel like they're torn beyond repair. So what's the point of this training, then? This is just pure torture. The more he thought about it, the more sweat poured down Dong-hun's face. Time flew by, and 30 minutes later, Dong-hun had reached his limit and was sprawled on the ground like a dead dog. Seeing his pathetic state, the old master decided to spare him from any more torment for the time being. All right, we'll end here for today. Perform this physical training every morning. Don't even think about summoning me if you haven't, the master said sternly. All right, Dong-hun replied, looking completely out of breath. At the same time, the duration of the art of instruction skill had expired, and so the old master's body slowly began to dematerialize. At that moment, sensing that their master could keel over at any second, the two skeleton buddies approached to check on him. Seeing them, Dong-hun turned and said, Hey, Skeleton 1, sorry, but can you give me a piggyback? I can't walk another step. Time passed quickly. With the help of Skeleton Swordsman 1, Dong-hun made it back to his company. The moment he opened the door and stepped inside, his senior saw him and waved him over. Hey, Dong-hun, you're finally here. Come on, get over here. He paused for a beat, then pointed to the two unfortunate hunters who had been trapped in the dungeon before explaining, You recognize them, right? They were part of the group that survived the last dungeon. Oh, right. I remember now, Dong-hun thought to himself. He was a bit curious why the two of them were here, but he didn't have to wonder for long. The two men approached and greeted him. Haha, Mr. Summoner. How have you been? Whoa, you've changed a bit, haven't you? You look a lot more muscular, even more handsome than before. Hearing this from both of them, Dong-hun's face flushed slightly with pleasure. Did they just say I got more handsome? Come to think of it, I really have gotten more built. My shoulders are broader. It's like my whole bone structure has changed. Can this really be the result of just one 30-minute session? But why did these hunters suddenly show up here? Dong-hun wondered before asking aloud. So what brings you guys here? The black-haired man in front of him suddenly adopted a more serious tone. Ahem. My apologies for the late introduction. It's a pleasure to meet you. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Kang Jaho, a C-rank hunter. Your actions and attitude last time left a deep impression on me. Since we both survived, I've come to see you as a very worthy partner. As he spoke, he held out his hand. Seeing this, Dong-hun happily shook it in return. I see. It's a pleasure to meet you too. As you know, I'm just an E-rank mercenary summoner. My name is Yu Dong-hun, he reintroduced himself. And with that, after the two had introduced themselves, the atmosphere between everyone became much more relaxed. And then, Kang Jiho revealed the reason he had come. All right, now let's get to the main point. I've received intel that a new dungeon has just appeared. A new dungeon? Dong-hun asked, raising an eyebrow. That's right. It's a pretty well-known type of C-rank dungeon, and we want to hire you. I heard you're having financial difficulties and will take any job. Is that true? He laughed, saying something that startled our main character. Annoyed, he immediately shot a look at his senior colleague because only that loudmouth would be capable of leaking that kind of information. This guy is unbelievable. He's sweetly selling me out just to make sure he gets a job too. He sighed to himself, seeing how their brotherly bond was worth less than a few coins. Pushing aside the thought of confronting his senior, Dong-hun turned and admitted, Yeah, it's true I'm in desperate need of money. Hearing this, Kang Jae-ho excitedly continued, Is that so? Well, then this dungeon is a bit tricky for a C-rank, but it's still worth a shot. If we're lucky, the rewards will be great. I recently heard a group found a potion. A strength enhancement potion, even. He said this with a mysterious smile, and just that piece of information alone was enough to make Dong-hun's jaw drop so wide you could fit a number 8 inside it. What a strength enhancement potion. A strength enhancement potion is an extremely rare item from dungeons. Regardless of the level, it's a high-grade potion that can cure any curse or illness, so its effects are needless to say incredible. And of course, the supply can never meet the demand. The drop rate is also extremely rare here. Seeing Dong-hun's dumbfounded expression, Kang Jae-ho said with satisfaction, "See, not bad, right? This time you won't be a supporter. You'll be a full-fledged member." In response, Dong-hun didn't rush to agree, but instead asked, "So what about the pay?" "Haha, what do you mean? You're not a supporter anymore. Of course we'll split the profits equally," Kang Jae-ho answered cheerfully, which surprised Dong-hun even more. "Really?" he asked again, thinking if there really is a strength enhancement potion, its average value is about 50 million won. And if that's divided among 6 people, each person would get about 8.33 million won. That's really not bad at all. Thinking about that money, dollar signs practically appeared in our main character's eyes. The feeling of being showered in money made him feel lightheaded, as if he were walking on clouds. "So will you join?" "The decision is yours," Kang Jae-ho asked again. And of course, at this point, Dong-hun had no reason to refuse. Besides, this was also a chance for him to test the strength of his minions. "All right, I'm getting tired of being a supporter anyway. I'm also curious to see the power of my evolved skeletons in a real battle. This is a good opportunity." Back with Kang Jae-ho, seeing that Dong-hun had agreed, a hint of joy appeared on his face. "Great then, just come to this location next Monday," he said, pointing to his phone screen. "Okay then. I'm also looking forward to working with everyone," Dong-hun said with a nod, and just like that, the two of them struck a deal. Time passed quickly, and the next day, while letting his skeleton soldiers train on their own, Dong-hun told his old master about what had happened. "You want to enter that dungeon?" the old man asked again. "That's right, for some reason. The hunters here get stronger through those dungeons," Dong-hun replied. However, after hearing this, a look of disapproval appeared in the old master's eyes. "How ridiculous. A mere novice already running all over the place. Are you trying to run before you can even walk?" The master turned back to Dong-hun. Seeing how strict the old man was, our main character had to explain to him that he needed to put food on the table. "Please understand, master. I have to make a living too." At this, the old master's eyes showed he just remembered. In the past, he never had to worry about money, so he'd forgotten that normal people have to work to earn a living. And so his attitude changed. "Fine. I also prefer real combat over studying theory at a desk." "So you're allowing me to go?" Dong-hun asked excitedly. In response, the master's eyes lit up like neon signs as he warned, "You can go. But I will not allow you to skip your training." "Ugh." Dong-hun let out a weary sigh. "What's with that reaction? Are you trying to run away?" "I know you can summon me in the dungeon," the old man reminded him. "I guess I can." Since Dong-hun said so, it was settled. "There's no time left. Let's start the next session." As he spoke, the old master began to crack his knuckles, while Dong-hun, remembering yesterday's agony, felt his blood pressure begin to rise. "What? Wait, are we starting already?" "No, hold on," Dong-hun shouted hastily, but his screams soon echoed throughout the place. Time passed quickly, and after a struggle with excruciating pain finally, the main character was spared by his master once again. "All right, that's enough for today. You did well," he praised generously as Dong-hun had endured the refinement process. Meanwhile over here, Dong-hun's back was soaked with sweat. In a daze, he thought he saw his ancestors calling to him from the other side of the river. "I almost died again. It's a good thing I got that new skill from the notification. Skill pain resistance rank C. Without this skill, I really wouldn't have been able to take it. So lucky. This skill still has potential to grow," he thought with relief. The old master, unaware of this, was still clapping and praising him. "Ho ho, you endured it very well." "Heh heh. It's all thanks to you, master," our hero mumbled, but with that pained expression on his face, it was hard to tell if the young man's praise was sincere or not. Back to the old geezer, seeing that Dong-hun was getting used to the pain and the training regimen, he also began to increase the difficulty of the game. "I'm very proud. I think we can increase the training intensity a bit starting tomorrow." Hearing him say that, Dong-hun's eyes flew wide open, staring straight at his master with an expression of utter disbelief, given that he had only survived today, thanks to his pain-resistance skill. If the intensity was increased, he couldn't imagine how horrific it would be. "What did I hear that right?" Ignoring Dong-hun's whining, the old master turned his gaze towards the skeleton brothers and shouted, "All right! Let's begin the official training session. Everyone assemble here. Hearing the old master's command, the group stopped what they were doing and hastily lined up in front of him. Next, he pointed to one side and said, "Now come over here and hold a stance just like last time. From now on during physical training, I will teach each of you one technique every day. Who wants to start first?" "A technique." Dong-hoon asked, his face filled with excitement, knowing just how precious the knowledge possessed by the living martial arts book before him was. "That's right, a technique." He paused for a beat, then pointed directly at Skeleton 1. "You the one holding the sword?" Being singled out, Skeleton 1 started to break out in a cold sweat, even though he didn't have skin to sweat from. He turned to look at his master. Seeing this, our hero could only give him a worried nod of reassurance. "He's a swordsman. He has no skills. He just knows how to swing a sword," he explained. "That's fine, because skills can be developed later. For now, just swing the sword," the old master said with a grin, which then turned into a demonic smile, as if he had already devised 100,000 types of hellish training methods for this skeleton. It sent a chill down the spine of even an immortal creature like him. Helpless, his master Dong-hoon could only shake his head and walk over. He patted his subordinate's shoulder comfortingly. "It's okay, Skeleton 1. He'll turn you into the greatest swordsman. However, you'll have to train until your bones break." The man said something that didn't sound like it should come from a human. Beside him, Skeleton 1 began to tremble all over, wondering if he should just hand in his resignation right now. At this rate, even if he didn't quit, his body would probably be forced into an early retirement. And so, following the master's instructions, Skeleton 1 began to practice swinging his sword non-stop. Feeling there was no need to correct his posture, the old man turned to our hero. "Hey kid, your name is Yu Dong-hoon, isn't it?" Hearing his name, Dong-hoon turned back a little surprised and nodded. "Yes, elder." "Then Dong-hoon, what do you think swordsmanship is?" he asked, staring intently at the young man. His gaze was filled with seriousness. Glancing at Skeleton 1's swinging motions, our hero said quietly, "Well, since it's called swordsmanship, isn't it a technique for using a sword?" Hearing this honest and rather bland answer, the old master looked up his expression, suggesting he had expected as much. "Just the simple-minded thinking I expected from you. But you're right. There's no need to overcomplicate it. Swordsmanship is simply swinging a sword, nothing more, nothing less. Now go pick up that stick over there." As he finished speaking, the elder tossed the stick in his hand down at Dong-hoon's feet. Dong-hoon, meanwhile, just stared at the stick on the ground. "So have you had some kind of epiphany? Now I get it. He doesn't just want those skeletons to inherit all his ultimate techniques. He wants me to inherit them too." As he had this thought, he reached down and picked up the stick, still unsure of what he was supposed to do with it. Then the old master spoke again. "Hold it tight." Dong-hoon's hands instinctively tightened around the stick. "You want me to hold it?" "That's what I said, isn't it? Just do it. Don't think so much. Just hold the sword in whatever way feels most comfortable for you. Can you do that?" Yes, sir," Dong-hoon replied after slightly adjusting his stance. The old master's gaze never left him as he continued his instruction. "Good. Now, better swing the sword with all your might." Following his command, Dong-hoon immediately began swinging the stick wildly. It created a series of whooshing sounds in the air, the wind whistling with each pass as if space itself was being torn apart. After a few swings, he stopped and turned his head to look at the old master with a skeptical expression. Is this how I'm supposed to do it?" "That's it, excellent." The master burst into hearty laughter, making Dong-hoon stop what he was doing. He turned to watch him, his face filled with confusion. "What excellent? Is he really a top-tier master?" Not letting him wonder for long and noticing Dong-hoon's doubtful expression, the old master suddenly stopped laughing and cleared his throat, his face growing serious. "Look at your right hand at how you're holding the sword. Your thumb is held firm, and the other 4 fingers grip the sword tightly. And what about the swinging posture?" the main character asked curiously. Seeing that Dong-hoon was paying attention to this, a look of satisfaction appeared in the old man's eyes, and he continued to explain. "You swung from the 10 o'clock position down to 4 o'clock, and then again from 2 o'clock down to 8 o'clock. That's how you just swung. But I haven't taught you a single thing. You swung it in a way that you felt was most comfortable for a slash, and your concept of slashing is based on everything you've experienced in your life. You just put your entire life into that slash." Each detailed explanation from the master began to ring in his ears, making Dong-hoon's face fill with disbelief as he looked at the stick in his hand. I really did that," Dong-hoon mumbled unconsciously, his eyes still filled with amazement. However, in response to this question, the old master didn't answer. Instead, he calmly walked toward the main character, his eyes filled with profound meaning. Now answer me this. If you add more power and speed to that slash, will it become stronger? Regarding this question, under normal circumstances, anyone would probably answer yes. But this was a question posed by a supreme master, so Dong-hun began to overthink it again. So much so that his brain seemed to be smoking and short-circuiting, freezing up for a few seconds. Seeing this look on his face, the master clicked his tongue in annoyance. There's that stupid look on your face again. Any slash becomes stronger with power and speed. This is a simple truth that will never change even if the world collapses. These words of teaching from his master seemed to pull Dong-hun out of his convoluted thoughts. Oh, I understand now. He wants me to create my own slash and then add power and speed to it, he thought to himself, his face showing his newfound understanding. Seeing that the look of bewilderment was gone from his face, the master spoke with satisfaction. It seems you're starting to understand, aren't you? In that case, do you know what happens? If that slash is repeated millions of times and reaches its apex, without another word, the old master casually grabbed the sword that was stuck in the ground and pointed it towards Dong-hun, preparing to show him a little of his power. Watch closely because this is the swordsmanship that you and those skeletons will learn. After he spoke, the atmosphere around the old man suddenly changed, becoming as solid as a mountain at that moment, and through Dong-hun's eyes he saw the master bring the sword back behind him. Then his body shifted slightly, moving his pivot foot forward. At the same time, his right arm slashed powerfully forward, creating an immense blast of wind pressure that sent everything around flying. Dong-hun could only stare, his eyes wide in astonishment at the technique he had just witnessed. Never mind the theory, just put more power into your swing if you can. Eventually, everyone will use your swing as the standard, the old master said with a laugh. After hearing this, Dong-hun was silent for 2 seconds, and then he gripped the staff in his hands and threw himself into training like a madman. So what if my stance is a little strange? It doesn't matter. Who cares if I swing my sword a little differently? This is my swing. I'll swing it how I want. Just like that, he entered a trance-like state while training. And the result of this effort was that he acquired a C-rank skill called Cleave, and this skill had even more potential for growth. The scene changes to a large, elegant office. In the center of the room, a handsome, black-haired young man with a calm demeanor sat at his desk, his hands gliding lightly over each sheet of paper, signing and taking notes on a series of important reports. This was Jay. Parang, the guild master of the Parang Guild, ranked 58th in the world and famous by the nickname Grand Archer. While Parang was still focused on his work, the quiet atmosphere was suddenly broken by the clear yet urgent voice of a young woman. Big brother. Hearing the call, he temporarily stopped the paperwork in his hands, stood up and asked, Sujin, what is it? This is the first time you've ever come looking for me. In response to his question, Sujin, looking a bit flustered, sat down on the sofa. Well, actually, I've been worried about something lately. Is it possible for a B-rank hunter to suddenly display power that surpasses even a ranker? She asked, looking at her older brother with a somewhat bewildered expression. Meanwhile, after hearing her, Parang was intrigued by the question. That's a rather strange question, isn't it? He remarked. Just answer me, Sujun complained. Helpless against his little sister, Parang had no choice but to give his answer. Well, usually, even if they get a special opportunity or learn a new skill, it takes time to master it. I think that's highly unlikely. If a case like that did happen, the only explanation is that they were hiding their abilities. He's definitely not hiding anything, Sujin said, shaking her head. Based on my senses, along with his actions and expressions, on Dong-hun's face I didn't see anything strange at all. Parang didn't doubt his sister's words one bit. All right, I believe you. After all, not even the top rankers can hide their abilities from you. Speaking of which, it's all because Sujun has an S-rank search skill that allows her to accurately gauge a person's strength. Back to Parang, after speaking, he became a bit interested that his little sister brought this up. Then that's impossible. So what on earth happened? Hearing his question, Sujun's face started to bead with sweat and she bit her lip. I still haven't reported to my brother about that dungeon. And how can I possibly tell him that I was defeated over and over again? The more she thought about it, the less she knew how to answer Parang's question. Then, thinking of the overwhelming power the old master possessed, Sujun felt both angry and helpless. That old geezer. I've never felt so helpless before. And yet, how could a B-rank hunter? It's true, my first impression of him was a bit unusual. I was curious, so I gave him a chance, but he actually surpassed it. He promised he'd tell me everything when things settled down, so I'll wait, Sujun told herself, and without realizing it, a faint smile appeared on her face as if she was looking forward to his answer. Back to Parang, when he saw his sister didn't want to reply, and that her expression was constantly changing, he started to worry a bit about his little sister's mental state. Hey kiddo, you're acting really suspicious. A moment ago you were so serious and now you're sitting here smiling to yourself. You're making me curious. Normally all you care about is using your daggers. Am I wrong? It's nothing, I'm leaving now, Sujun said, waving her hand. Don't be shy. Just tell me. Parang teased now that he could clearly tell something interesting had happened. Whatever, she said, her voice tinged with embarrassment. And she hurried away before her older brother could sniff out anything else. Time passed quickly. 7 days later, today was the day Dong-hun had arranged to meet with Kang Jae-ho's group to enter the dungeon gate together. A C-rank one. As the group was waiting, the sound of footsteps suddenly echoed from behind, drawing their attention. Turning to look, they saw that the person who had arrived was Dong-hun. The whole group nodded in greeting. Hey, Necromancer over here. You're right on time. I sent the dungeon details via text. I'm sure you looked them over on your way here. Right, yeah, of course. Dong-hun smiled, recalling the information that Kang Jae-ho had sent to his phone earlier. This dungeon was C-rank, a desert type. The main objective was to kill the monsters and defeat the boss monster, a very basic and typical dungeon, just like any other. Thinking this, he scratched his cheek a bit sheepishly and spoke. Just as you mentioned, I put on sunscreen and brought emergency ice water. Up front, Kang Jae-ho, seeing that Dong-hun had followed his instructions, gave a satisfied nod. Not bad. Back to Dong-hun, he glanced over the group with Kang Jae-ho, his eyes showing a bit of surprise. Wait a minute. There seemed to be more people than he mentioned before. Who are those two? He looked suspiciously at the two girls standing not far away who were still talking. That's the dungeon gate. We'll see the desert as soon as we go through this gate, the long-haired girl spoke. As for Kang Jae-ho, seeing Dong-hun's suspicious look, he clapped our hero on the shoulder and explained, this time we hired 2 more B-rank supporters. Don't worry, we've already paid them, so you won't be charged any extra fees. Hearing the explanation, the suspicion on Dong-hun's face vanished. Oh, I see. Thanks. With that said, he figured there was nothing wrong with hiring extra help. It was perfectly logical. You need supporters to collect ores and dropped items inside a dungeon. A C-rank dungeon, huh? It should be fine. After all, my skeletons can take down the strongest B-rank goblin monster in an instant, he thought to himself. And just like that, once the whole group had assembled, they quickly moved through the gate. They waited until they appeared on the other side. What greeted the group was the sight of an arid desert with countless jagged rocks scattered about. At the same time, as soon as he stepped inside, Dong-hun immediately received a debuff notification. You have entered the dungeon. You are enduring a harsh environment. All your stats are reduced by 10%. The air, scorching like a furnace, made Dong-hun squint and raise a hand to shield his eyes as he looked up. Meanwhile, the others in the group were already drenched in sweat, fanning themselves furiously. It's a shame they were only fanning hot air on themselves. Whoa, it's even hotter than I imagined. The hunter in the turban whined, but the big guy next to him, though just as hot, could only advise, we just have to endure it. Just think of it as being in a sauna. Easier said than done. Can you really think of it like that? The other guy let out a heavy sigh. Over here, unlike them, although Dong-hun did feel a bit uncomfortable, he could still handle this. It felt like child's play, especially compared to the hellish training Dong-hun received from his old master. After that, having officially entered the dungeon, Dong-hun didn't let his guard down for a second. He immediately decided to use his summoning skill to call forth all his soldiers. Looking at his little minions, even though the guy in the hat had seen them once before, seeing them a second time, he couldn't hide his curiosity. He moved closer to observe the 4 skeletons holding shields and commented with constant admiration. Whoa, Necromancer, they look even stronger than last time. Hearing this, Dong-hun couldn't help but chuckle to himself, mentally giving the guy a thumbs up for his sharp eye. Up ahead, Kang Jae-ho, seeing that the situation was stable, clapped his hands to get the group's attention. All right, everyone, focus up. The monsters here are mainly scorpions and snakes. We'll have to face them. Upon hearing that, the other 2 members of the group suddenly became frightened. One of them cried out, Snakes! But Kang Jeho immediately laughed loudly to reassure them. Don't be afraid. They're only C-rank monsters. He then turned to instruct the two female supporters, adding, just stick close to us, pick up the items we tell you to, and hand over the designated things. Got it. Both girls immediately nodded in agreement. After that, the group continued to move forward. However, as time passed, and under the influence of the dungeon's heat, the group's morale gradually began to wane. At this rate, they might collapse before they even see a monster. One of them complained, "It's so hot. How much farther do we have to go?" But meanwhile, his eyes were bloodshot. Drool was uncontrollably dripping out, and he looked like he was about to collapse right then and there. Kang Jeho, who was walking up ahead, suddenly seemed to realize something. He immediately raised his hand, signaling the group to stop. Everyone saw and instantly became more alert. The guy in the turban looked around and asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't see anything." Just as he finished speaking, as if to prove Kang Jeho right, the ground around them suddenly began to shake violently. Then, from within the nearby sand dunes, a swarm of giant, sand-colored scorpions suddenly rushed out. Their brown color seemed to be a gift from nature, helping them camouflage perfectly with the sand. However, since the group was already well prepared, the moment they saw them charge, Kang Jeho immediately gripped his dagger and began slashing relentlessly. He struck accurately at the joints on the scorpions' bodies. Their blue blood spurted out like rain, creating a blue-blooded shower in the scorching desert. After taking down a few of the scorpions in the lead, Kang Jeho turned back and reassured the group, "Everyone calm down, change formation, and get ready to fight." Hearing this, a big guy in a gray shirt from the group shouted, "All right, everyone, get into your battle stances." And just like that, the battle officially began. A thick cloud of desert dust billowed up, obscuring the vision of both sides. Dong-hoon didn't rush in to attack immediately. Instead, he paused for a moment to assess the situation and analyze his opponent's strength. These are C-rank desert scorpions. He thought to himself, "Looks like you guys are on the same level as that goblin I fought back at the training ground." Having gauged their strength, Dong-hoon was no longer worried. He turned to Skeleton 5 and ordered, "Use your shield to protect me. Block everything you can." Hearing the command, Skeleton 5 immediately turned and used its protection skill, creating a sturdy, invisible shield to protect its master. Next, Dong-hoon, with a look of excitement in his eyes, shouted to his entire group of minions, "All right, my skeleton soldiers, wipe them all out." The group immediately got into position, ready for a tense and fierce battle. After receiving the protective air shield, Dong-hoon felt somewhat relieved. Without needing another order, the Guardian Skeleton 4 automatically ran to the front, raising its shield and leading the skeleton soldiers in a charge. At the same time, it also used its level 1 low-grade taunt skill to draw the monster's attacks, preventing them from focusing on its allies. From the rear, Dong-hoon watched his minions fight enthusiastically and felt satisfied. He nodded, pointed his staff forward, and commanded, "Go! Destroy them all." As soon as they were hit by Skeleton 4's invisible taunt, the desert scorpions at the front's eyes flashed with a fierce light as they turned to stare at the shield-bearer. Their expressions were filled with rage. Taking advantage of their distraction, Skeleton 1, the swordsman of the group, gripped its sword tightly, rushed forward, and swung with all its might. It slashed straight into the body of a desert scorpion. However, the moment the sword made contact with the monster's hard shell, a clang rang out as a few sparks flew. The sword didn't leave a single mark on its incredibly sturdy defensive shell. The scorpion's defensive power was so strong that even Dong-hoon, watching from behind, was stunned. Even though it couldn't pierce their defense, Skeleton 1's attack still had some effect, he thought. Dong-hoon decided to stick with a long-term strategy of attrition. He didn't rush, instead calmly instructing the group to keep up the pressure. "Just keep at it. If you keep hitting them like this, they'll definitely go down," Dong-hoon said. Hearing this command, Skeleton 3, standing at the back, drew its bow and continuously fired precise arrows into the scorpion's body. Although the arrows couldn't injure it, they made the monster feel as if its authority was being fiercely challenged. But before the scorpion could go berserk, Skeleton 2, the spear wielder, lunged forward. Aiming straight for the monster's face, its spear pierced through the scorpion's giant body. There was just enough time to hear a piercing screech before it collapsed and kicked the bucket. It didn't even have a chance to fight back. Watching his soldiers fighting in perfect sync, Dong-hoon felt completely at ease, so much so that he could stand to the side and enjoy a drink. "Hot tea, this is easier than I thought," he said softly, feeling like he didn't even need to lift a finger. At the same time, with the skeleton army joining the fray, The group of hunters up front also felt the pressure ease. Even Kang Jae-ho, who was in the middle of fighting, stopped to turn and praise Dong-hoon. "Whoa, Necromancer, your skeletons are incredible. It looks like you've come across a great fortune." Kang Jae-ho's praise took Dong-hoon a bit by surprise, but he still gave a bright smile in return. "It was nothing, really. I was only able to do this because you all handled the largest group first." "Ha ha!" Kang Jae-ho burst out laughing. "Don't be so modest. Doesn't finding a great fortune change a person's personality?" Dong-hoon just laughed and scratched his head shyly as the man praised him like that. However, this praise made Dong-hoon feel a bit suspicious. He paused for a moment, thinking about what Kang Jae-ho had just said. Finding a great fortune, can really change a person's personality. This feeling made Dong-hoon raise his guard. He realized that even though this group was very strong, there was no way they didn't know that he was the one who received the biggest reward from the dungeon. He was the only one who had benefited from such a dangerous mission. In reality, they couldn't just ask him about it directly. Because of the Parang Guild's non-disclosure agreement, the only way to find out the truth is by exploring dungeons where there are no cameras and no records are kept. That's why accidents happening frequently inside dungeons is likely unavoidable. Dong-hoon continued to grip his staff, his guard constantly up, seeing the serious look on his face. It couldn't help but be curious, not understanding why his master had such an expression. From behind, Kang Jae-ho watched Dong-hoon's back, a wicked smile playing on his lips as if he were secretly hatching some evil plan. Time passed quickly. After neatly dispatching the scorpion monsters blocking their path, the group arrived at a desolate, crumbling ruin weathered by the desert. Carved into the doorway of the small stone building was the symbol of a desert scorpion. The moment they arrived, the entire party received a system notification. Lair of the Desert Scorpion King. To break the seal of the Lair of the Desert, Scorpion King, a sacrifice is required. Place 2 offerings on the altar. The offerings must be hunters of E rank or higher. Hearing this requirement from the system, the faces of the 2 female supporters went pale, because as fate would have it, the 2 of them perfectly fit this condition. Even Dong-hoon, standing at the back, found this coincidence to be incredibly strange. He couldn't help but feel that something was off. E rank offerings? No one mentioned anything about this, he thought with suspicion. And just then, the men in Kang Jae-ho's group started giving the 2 female supporters strange looks. "Ha ha, offerings, huh? How strange! How could this have happened?" the man in the bandana said mockingly, his words dripping with insinuation. "Right. How are we supposed to find offerings in the middle of the desert?" The man in the hood chimed in, and then both of them stared fixedly at the 2 girls, not even bothering to hide their sinister gazes, causing the women's anxiety to grow. "What are you planning to do?" the long-haired girl asked in a panic. In response to her question, Kang Jae-ho's face turned cold. "Didn't you hear? We need to offer 2 sacrifices, 2 hunters E rank or higher. Don't tell me you don't understand." "What are you still standing there for? Get moving," he said dismissively, and at that moment, even though they didn't want to believe it, the 2 girls understood that they had likely been lured into a trap by this party. "Are you people insane?" the girl screamed. "Insane, I suppose we are." "If it makes you feel better, you can go on thinking that," Kang Jae-ho replied with a shrug. Then, the short-haired girl also confronted these wicked men. "Why are you doing this to us? Don't tell me you planned this from the very beginning." Turning to face Kang Jae-ho, the young hunter's naive words made him burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, you really don't get it, do you? The pay was higher than usual. Why else would anyone hire trash like you 2? If you want to get paid that much, you have to pay a steep price. Am I wrong?" As he spoke, he drew the dagger from his hip. It was clear that if the 2 girls in front of him didn't go willingly, he would use force to make them. Back to Dong-hoon. While that Kang Jae-ho guy was yapping away, he stood to the side, observing with an ice-cold expression. "What is this situation? If they're acting like this in front of me, they must be confident they can easily take me down, right?" Dong-hoon thought to himself, staring intently at Kang Jae-ho's face. He could feel the danger in the air. Then, as if not wanting to waste any more time, clearing this dungeon, Kang Jae-ho tightened his grip on his dagger and coldly ordered the 2 girls, "All right, stop resisting, just get on the altar yourselves." Hearing this, before the 2 female supporters could even react, an arm suddenly shot out to shield them, causing Kang Jae-ho's eyes to flash with surprise. "Huh, what the?" he blurted out, seeing Dong-hoon dare to step up and protect these 2 helpless chicks in a situation like this. "You 2 stay out of this," the protagonist said calmly. Seeing this, that Kang Jae-ho guy wondered if Dong-hoon had been kicked in the head or something to dare pull a stunt like this. What do you think you're doing? Perhaps you're more righteous than I thought. Or are you just trying to play the hero? He said, his voice dripping with mockery. Before him, Dong-hoon couldn't be bothered. Instead of arguing with him, you just asked directly, "Shut up, what is your purpose? Why did you people come to the Mercenary Association and bring me here?" Upon hearing these words, Kang Jae-ho's eyes showed a hint of contemplation before he nodded. It seems you're not that stupid, are you? Spit it out! Dong-hoon roared, the sound echoing through the silence, making Kang Jae-ho jump back a step from the shout. His face also broke out in a sweat, a hint of wariness creeping in. Just as I thought, you clearing out that dungeon wasn't just luck, was it? That's right. You've probably figured it out. We want to know about that lucky opportunity, Kang Jae-ho said with a smile. I don't know exactly how to handle and defeat that monster worm. So that's why we decided to play nice and lead you to this dungeon. But hey, we have no intention of fighting you. Dong-hoon heard this. His face immediately screamed bullshit. No intention of fighting me, the main character retorted sarcastically. Ignoring his attitude, Kang Jae-ho continued to nod, affirming once more. That's right, we did this to show you what kind of people we are and to ask if you want to join us. Of course, if you want to join, you'll definitely have to bring a portion of your lucky opportunity to share with us. Of course, our rewards are very fair when it comes to splitting profits, the greedy bastard said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He wants to sit back and reap the rewards, and of course our Dong-hoon isn't stupid enough to just cough up his unique opportunity for them. But in reality, even if he wanted to, he couldn't give it to them, because what he received were just skills and stats, not any physical rewards. Humph, these lunatics, Dong-hoon growled inwardly. So in short, they're a bunch of devils asking if I want to join them. If so, then hand over your reward. That's about the gist of it, huh? Thinking this, the negotiation had come to an end. The main character didn't need to waste any more time arguing with them. Skeleton 3, destroy them, Dong-hoon yelled. And immediately, as if by natural reflex, our friend Skeleton 3 drew and released 10 arrows, all flying forward, aimed at the two hooded figures. The surprise attack made both of them freeze in place, terrified. Luckily, the Grim Reaper didn't want to take this bunch just yet. So at the critical moment, the pack leader Kang Jae-ho rushed forward, swinging the dagger in his hand and slicing all the incoming arrows in half. After that, he turned his murderous gaze to stare daggers at Dong-hoon and warned, "Ha ha, so that's your answer, is it? You're going to regret this." In response, although slightly disappointed that his surprise attack had no effect, Dong-hoon shot back boldly, "I will never cooperate with a bunch of animals like you." As soon as he finished speaking without needing another command, the remaining skeleton soldiers charged forward, aiming straight for the most dangerous one, this Kang Jae-ho. And the moment he clashed with Skeleton Swordsman 1's blade, his hand began to tremble, veins popping out. But this guy's mouth was still running big. "You think you got strong just because you got lucky? Just a few days ago you were nothing but a support," he said contemptuously. Just like that, Dong-hoon's 5 minions began to clash head-on with Kang Jae-ho's group. It was now a 5-on-3, but both groups were locked in a stalemate, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. Behind them, Dong-hoon watched the scene unfold. He had to reevaluate Kang Jae-ho's strength. No wonder he was so confident he could take Dong-hoon down earlier. He was stronger than he thought. He's a C-rank hunter, but his strength is almost on par with a B rank. But that's even better. As for Kang Jae-ho, while he was struggling in a deadlock with the Skeleton Swordsman, for some reason the guy suddenly broke into a smug grin. "Hehehe, you think you can win just because I'm the only one you have to face? That's a big mistake. Do you know why we're not afraid to enter dungeons of an undetermined rank?" Hearing him say this, a sense of unease suddenly welled up inside Dong-hoon, as if he'd thought of something. "Skeleton soldier!" he yelled. At the same time, Skeleton 1 also realized the problem and immediately raised its sword, successfully blocking a dagger that was flying towards it. And whether it was due to some kind of backlash, Dong-hoon also seemed to feel a bit of the pain. "Unak, even I, their summoner, can feel that blow," he said, gritting his teeth. And following his gaze, a hazy figure shrouded in faint black smoke slowly appeared behind Kang Jae-ho. "That's right. The stinking hunter rat behind me is an A-rank assassin from Shadow, just as Lucas said." He also considered himself lucky for bringing along an insurance policy as a precaution, and sure enough, he ended up having to use it. The sudden appearance of an A-rank assassin out of nowhere also caused the atmosphere of the fight to change in an instant. Speaking of this assassin, After observing for a moment, he finally spoke up. Are you sure we're talking about the right person? You're the one who cleared the dungeon, right? The one that even Jisoo couldn't handle, wasn't it? He asked, but Kang Jae-ho answered for him. That's right, my friend. Hearing this, the assassin stared intently at Dong-hun, sizing him up. Then after a few seconds, he shook his head. He doesn't look all that strong. Back to Dong-hun, the fact that there was an A-rank assassin here truly made the guy break out in a cold sweat. An A-rank assassin. There's no escape now. It was already a miracle that I survived this long against those B-rank hunters. So if an A-rank assassin gets involved now, it's all over, he thought to himself. And it wasn't just him. The two support members behind him clearly understood this as well. And so at that moment, the short-haired girl gently tugged on Dong-hun's sleeve and said, I'm sorry. We've caused you so much trouble. But thank you so much. Even though this is the end. But we're still so very grateful. Thank you so much. As she spoke, her eyes filled with tears, and our protagonist couldn't help but feel for them. What on earth did they do to end up in such a cruel situation like this? Why do they have to be sacrificed just because they're weak? I'm not giving up. I'm going to save them.